Good evening, everyone, and welcome. It's so nice to see so many of you here tonight, and welcome to the City of Lake Forest Park City Council regular meeting for Thursday, June 13th. At this time, I would ask Councilmember Reports to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would please, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember. And with that, I would entertain a motion for adoption of the agenda.
I move the adoption of the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Reports.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to propose moving item 12, council discussion and action acceptance of the Lake Forest Park Climate Action Plan, to be the new item 8 in front of the consent calendar.
It's been, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to move item 12 to new item number 8 and reorder appropriately. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you, council. Back to the original motion. Are there any additional amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of the agenda as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you, council. We have a very full evening tonight and a very full council chambers. Thanks to you all for coming out. And with that, we're going to start with public comments. And as our I have our little spiel here we read. The council will not be accepting online public comments. This portion of the agenda is set aside for the public to address the council on agenda items or any other topic the council might have purview or control over. If the comments are of a nature that the council does not have influence or control over, then the mayor may request the speaker suspend their comments. The council may direct staff to follow up on items brought up by public. Comments are limited to a 3-minute time limit. Chief, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. And with that, let's see. We're going to start here with Theodore. Speaking on the climate action plan, please join us at the podium. Welcome.
Hi. First, I'd like to thank the council for your time and consideration, and also to congratulate the acceptance of the climate action plan. I'm a student studying chemistry and environmental science, and I'm a lifelong resident of the area. I would like to impart scientific information on tire chemicals and pollutants and their effects on the city's waterways and ecosystems, as well as share some thoughts on past and future city action. Automobile tires degrade as they're used on a day-to-day basis and release particles of rubber and synthetic chemicals onto our roadways and sidewalks and into our air and ecosystems. These chemicals linger and build up and have serious toxic impacts on animal life and the surrounding ecosystem. 6-ppd quinone is an example of a pollutant released by tires that is fatal to fish, such as our native salmon. 6-ppd quinone is released from tires unapparent to the naked eye, alongside other chemicals which accumulate on transportation arteries or end up washing into our waterways, such as Lion or McAleer Creek. This chemical has dire effects on salmon mortality and is an example of overlooked chemical toxins that must be addressed as we work towards a more climate-conscious future. Of course, the city of Lake Forest Park is not responsible for the composition of tires. However, it is important to address this threat to salmon, aquatic life, and also our health and future. I believe we should increase efforts to collect accumulation of road dust, which is rich in tire chemicals and also gasoline and oil pollutants, before it has the chance to wash into our waterways, where it decimates already threatened aquatic species. Another way to prevent chemical leaching affecting our waterway and salmon would be to increase cleanup efforts in areas around waterways where dereliction and waste buildup is still common, mainly due to a lack of active supervision. I support the goals of the Climate Action Plan to enhance Lake Forest Park ecosystem health and implement proactive environmental plans. I also strongly support the notion put forward in the Climate Action Plan that there should be a dedicated climate action manager. And finally, I think that the climate action manager should have contact with a team that could support the implementation of environmental remediation and projects that could not be completed by one individual. Thank you again for your consideration and time.
Thank you, Theodore. Appreciate your comments. And next we have Connie commenting on the Shoreline Historical Museum. Welcome, Connie.
Hello, I am a resident of Lake Forest Park, and I'm here because I'm a big supporter of our wonderful city of Lake Forest Park, stepping up and supporting the important work and the legacy that has been building within the Shoreline Historical Museum. They've been so wonderful, spearheading so much since 1976, and well, before that too, but our city history also would be so nice to collaborate more with the people that come into the museum and want to, or either in college or high school, who want to do more research. And there are so many archives in that big collection and archives building that to have somebody there to really go through things and delve into the history and the stories that can enrich us as well as those in the Shoreline city. I've heard, let's see, I did that. So I just, yeah, I want to put that that support idea out there, and I hope that we as a city can find the resources to donate to that great organization. Not to mention all the Milwaukee things that they're doing as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Connie. We should have all worn our Milwaukee hats from that cold day. Let's see, next on our list, let's see, Kathy and Ann. Our friends from the Library Advisory Committee. Yeah, I bet you have a recommendation for us.
Hi, I'm Ann Jigley, and I'm a resident of Lake Forest Park. I'm Catherine Kernan, a 52-year resident of Lake Forest Park and a member of the Library Advisory Council, which is actually underneath the City Council. We're presenting this year our Reads program, and the Reads is we have a book that we like. We want it to become a community read, and it's the 19th year that we have focused on a particular book for sharing with the community. This year, it's called Monsters, A Fan's Dilemma. And the author who is Claire Ditterer, she'll be on the Third Place Commons stage on Tuesday, July 30th at 7 p.m. for a discussion of her book. The book really is a deeply personal book that when she began to write this, her premise was, what do we do when we love the work and hate the life behind it? One of the first people that in the book is Roman Polanski, who was a genius filmmaker, Academy Award winner, child rapist, Holocaust survivor, Manson family victim, and a fugitive from justice. And so when we look at the work, how do we judge? How do we interact with that? We're hoping that it inspires a lot of discussion in the community, and also that book clubs choose to read the book and come to the presentation. So we're hoping that we see as many of you that can attend, and that you have the opportunity to read the book. So thank you.
Thank you so
wanna
much,
say?
everyone.
We also tabled at the farmer's market last Sunday promoting this program and had a lot of interest both in this program and the Shoreline adult librarian, Amy Neff, was also there and signed up people for library cards, and had a lot of good discussion with especially parents of children who want to be engaged in reading for the summer.
Right.
So good event.
Right. So she was able to sign up kids for the Summer Reads program. And there's also, we should mention that one of the summer reads is from age 5 up to adults. So if you're interested in earning some badges, sign up at the library. Okay,
Wonderful.
thank you.
Thanks to you
Thank
both.
you.
Let's see, going down the list here, there's some folks that are not requesting to speak. I think we have Larry and Louise Gales. Would you like, are they here? Is that correct? Larry and Louise? You in the house? Oh, just signed it. Okay, that's fine. No worries. Jerry, I believe this is Martin. Mr. Martin, are you in the? Okay, no problem. It's okay. You guys are all enthusiastic. We appreciate that. And Sally, of course, please.
So Sam helped me give some piece to Matt. I don't know if you're passing out to you. What is the program flyer wrap part of the different programs at Shoreline, and then as well as a book proposal and a history book that we're working on.
Yes, wonderful.
Yeah, I did put my second start now. Hi, everybody. I just want to urge the council, I'm here on behalf of the Shoreline Historical Museum and strongly urge you to support with funding. I'm going to talk about 3 programs that I'm familiar with in particular. One is the Miyawaki Forest, of course. Another one is the history of the first people of Lake Forest Park. And the last one is talking about the archives. So first of all, thank you, Ellen, Tracy, and Mayor Tom and your daughter for coming and being a part of the planting day. It was fabulous. And as you know, there were tons of Lake Forest Park residents attending it, as well as a lot of us who are involved in the museum making it happen. The museum provided the land for the first Miyawaki Urban Forest History Project in our area. That models how rewilding in urban spaces is possible. This is relevant for us today to show more ways to mitigate climate change. In addition, the forest has allowed our LFP community members to collaborate with the Shoreline and Seattle communities, which in turn has allowed us to benefit from the other resources that partnering communities have offered. This project would not have been possible had we only had our city's resources to depend on. Because natural history is linked to human history, museum is also providing an opportunity to educate about the value of native plants and the first people who stewarded those plants. By having programs where Lake Forest Park residents and Professor Dana Campbell, many of you know, gave an amazing lecture on the language of the forest and where volunteers came together and made bilingual Lushootseed and English plant signs. LFP benefits from these programs. History is not just about the past. History enables us to discover our place in the world and informs what we do in the present and in the future. And on Planting Day, it was so inspirational because there were a lot of young people there, which is oftentimes hard to get young people to come to a museum. There were a lot of young people. In every case, when I went around to interviewing them, they talked and said to me that it was important for them to be a part of this because it was something they could do to help slow down climate change. Another project that I mentioned is the history of the first people of Lake Forest Park. For 2 years, people in our community have been getting together because 2 years because we've been meeting to have David Berge, an author, write the history of LFP that is missing from Barbara Bender's 2 volumes of books, namely the history of the first people. The museum is instrumental in this project because this is where the plain and simple comes in. If the museum did not take on this project, we could never have gotten funding. It is only because of the museum that donors can get a 501c3. Is that right? Is that the right one? Okay. And could help us fund this project. And this is also true of Barbara Bender's books. If you look, the Shoreline Historical Museum was behind her as well. Museum is instrumental in this project because, in addition, our intent with this project is not to make a book and sell and make money. It is to make the information accessible to all. And as a result, the museum will allow us to house our ebook on their website for free. Now, the last aspect of the museum that I want to mention is the archives. I'll just pass these around with that. And a lot of you guys have seen this because I actually, was digging through my, all of you, you're going through your parents' stuff and you're throwing things away and it's like, wow, look at this. And so I, what do you call it when you computerize it, scan it? And then I digitized it and I send it to all you guys. But what I want to say here. Okay. So when I found the shopping center news circular commemorating 20 years of LFP history, I scanned it and sent it to a lot of you. And then again, Bender's books. There is a dearth of information surrounding this stand our community took against developers. And I just love this part of history, I have to say. This article captures the details our community took to protect the environment against developers, a case that went to the state Supreme Court with John Ehrlichman, you might remember, was representing the developers, and Francis Holman, who became our first mayor representing our community. This, as we know, was the catalyst for how our town became the city of Lake Forest Park. So why is the museum important there? Well, if not for the museum, archived documents such as this would have no place to go other than my recycle bin, right? Clean out your parents' stuff. There's so much. It's just nice to know that was a place that can preserve our history. I think about our history of fighting for the environment. Then I also think about Grace Cole Park. And I also think about 5 Acre Woods. And today, our community's formation of CORE, right? It's the same ethos that we've had for many years. And we know that because of history. So the museum plays an important role for our community. And again, that's 3 minutes. Again, I urge you to support funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
And I apologize, I skipped around here a little bit. I think I missed Karsten. Karsten, please. My apologies. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Mayor, City Council members, and esteemed colleagues. My name is Carson. I'm currently a post-baccalaureate student at North Seattle College. I'm not a Lake Forest Park resident, but I work in the area. As a prior active duty service member, I know firsthand how difficult it can be to make change in a large governmental organization. I'm writing this comment today with the hope that it will resonate with you enough to remind you of the importance of the future and the importance of making change today with the hope that we can begin to solve tomorrow's problems. For years, we've known about climate change and the effects that it has not only on our planet, but on our own health. While the city of Lake Forest Park is a small part of climate change, we have the ability to make change now, and with hope that others will follow. Everyone continues to rely on federal and state regulations, but it is time for everyone to take responsibility for their own actions. If we continue to wait, and according to research, we will no longer be able to reverse these changes post-2027. One of the very changes we've seen locally is the impact on salmon and the local ecosystems. Some of the changes include decreased water volumes in streams and for longer periods of time, as well as warmer water temperatures. The city of Lake Forest Park has already identified the prominent places that pollution comes from, to include failing septic tanks, leaking vehicles, car washing, improper disposal of animal waste, and it goes on. So after reading the 2024 SWMP plan published on March 27th, 2024, and the water quality report published on March 29th, 2024, and reviewing the stream maps and the critical areas, I've come to the following recommendations for the council. First would be to make the data more accessible for citizens to view. If you currently look up the current stormwater management action plan on the website for the Public Works Department, it only shows the stormwater management action plan receiving water assessment from March 2022. Even when searching for the same document, the search showed a lack of the same report for 2023. It is important to make our fellow citizens aware of the current data in an easily understood and timely manner. Secondly, increasing funding, and most importantly for street sweeping and inspections of catch basins and outfalls for illicit discharges and non-permitted substances. This includes increasing street sweeping from the proposed 5 times to 10 times, according to the March 2023 document, and increasing from the required 12% to a minimum city of 20%, even though they completed 14.6% in 2023. Thirdly, enhancing areas and around streams to prevent untreated runoff. This would be done through developer incentives for redevelopment of existing infrastructure in MS4 areas to encourage design to minimize impact on natural waters. Amend municipal code to restrict all development in the forest and wetlands areas to include change and review of municipal codes from 6 years to 3 years, requiring new developments to include runoff systems that clean polluted waters, prevent all new development in forest and wetland areas, as well as changing the review of stream health from every 6 years to 3 years. While these changes won't happen tomorrow or maybe even this year, I think everyone here has the opportunity to take action in taking part of this change for the future citizens and city council members of Lake Forest Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Karsten. Let's see. I'm gonna be challenged by this name. My name is very boring, so this is a much more interesting name. Is it Hung? Yes. Did I get that correctly? Correct? I apologize. Welcome.
Hi, hello Lake Forest Park Council members. My name is Hung Chong. I'm a second-year engineering student from North Seattle College, and today I would like to present my comment about the Lake Forest Park coho salmon crisis. Salmon has been with our state for millions of years. It is all part of the state history and is what we're known for. But more importantly, the heritage and culture of our indigenous people here in the Evergreen State. It was and has been our main food source, a form of art, and even literature. Unfortunately, in present time, we have made the biggest mistake by trusting greedy tire companies that they could produce tires that are environmentally acceptable. A chemical named 6-ppd quinone exists in tire particles found in water samples from our creeks, where salmon mostly spawns near big roads and I-5. All the main reason why the mortality rate of pre-spawned salmons being well over 90%, which is a dangerously high number. These tire particles are formed when cars are moving on the road. 6-ppd, a preservative that helps tires last longer, make contact with the road, and it combusts due to the friction, and it reacts with the air around the tires, making 6-ppd quinone. These tire particles are then washed into the streams where coho salmons comes up to lay their eggs. And unfortunately, almost all of them drown within a span of hours when they are in contact with these waters. A solution is to set up a buffer between the streams and the road to filter these tire particles out and continue supporting the Climate Action Task Force recommendations. In addition, currently we need to push tire companies to use alternative chemicals instead of 6-ppd. Thank you for sharing my public comment.
Thank you very much on thoughtful comments. Let's see, and now we have our friend Armin Micheline, please. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'm going to keep it short. I'm speaking for the Shoreline Historical Museum. I am currently the treasurer for the museum. And as such, I see on a fairly frequent basis the amount of expense that we put forward every month in order to keep all the things we're trying to do active. It's very expensive to run a museum. We get support from the city of Shoreline, which is invaluable. Without it, we would not exist. We do serve Lake Forest Park in many ways. I am currently a 48-year resident of Lake Forest Park. I'm on the board as the representative for Lake Forest Park to the museum. And I just want to very strongly ask you to support this, support the museum and its efforts, as it will make a difference in our long-term strategic plan. It has so many great things that we're planning and working on. Your support will help to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Armand. Oh, and thank you for your comments, written comments as well, Armand. Let's see, we have, is it Naomi Escobar? Naomi, excuse me. Please.
I'm gonna apologize for some pronunciation as well in advance. Hello, everyone. My name is Naomi Escobar-Appel. I'm a wildlife biology student at North Seattle College. I would like to share with you some of the chemistry that I'm learning this quarter, and that will help salmon in this case, and how we can protect it in the McClear and Lion Creeks at Lake Forest Park. According to many scientists in the Seattle area and the Department of Ecology of Washington State, coho salmon deaths before laying their eggs have been linked to 6-ppd quinone, most known as tire dust. And this one, when it's mixed with stormwater, the tire dust ends up in water streams where salmon lay their eggs. We have to remember that any disruption of any species in the ecosystem affects the environment. One of these ones is the orca, which their main food source is the salmon. Salmon is also a food source, income, and heritage of the Pacific Northwest Native tribes. And it's our duty as a residents of Washington State to protect these species that provide healthy ecosystem and food source for many. We have to take responsibility for the damage we've done by taking action. My suggestions for the community that help protect salmon habitat from tire dust are: 1, in schools or educational centers, organize group cleanups for students to participate in and teach them the importance of the environmental protection and the protection of salmon so they can teach others in their community. 2nd, in Beshatla Creek, the little sister of McClear and Lion Creeks, to find the specific locations where stormwater is reaching the stream and create a way to transport contaminated water to a safer location, such as a reservoir where it can be treated or recycled, the water. This project might mean a little bit of more money and more planning, but it should be taken into consideration. And the 3rd one, natural filters. Water filters can be expensive to change. They have to be disposed of and most likely end up in the landfill. Natural filters can reduce stormwater pollution that reaches the stream, and this can be monitored by experts. I want to thank the volunteer climate task forces that recommended a one-way road that can act as a natural water filter. Okay, we need to act now. We're just borrowing this land from our great grandkids, and we cannot destroy it. In fact, we should give it back better. Thank you so much. And I want to say one last thing. Congratulations on the climate action plan that it's going to be adopted tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Thoughtful comments. And we have Lourdes Salazar Rios. Please, welcome.
Nice rolling of the R there. I appreciate that, Mayor.
Do my best.
No, thank you. Well, as you mentioned, Mayor and City Council members, my name is Lourdes Salazar Rios, and I am not a resident of Lake Forest Park. However, I am a chemistry student at North Seattle College in pursuit of a degree, not necessarily in environmental sciences. However, I am pursuing a career change, as I say, into dietetics and nutrition. I'm a former and seasoned PR executive, so I'm much more aged from my classmates here, who are equally and ambitious and passionate about the sciences that we've been learning this past few months. And that is, as they've mentioned, the lack of awareness is my point, but the amount of presence that a toxic chemical is having in our creeks here in the city of Lake Forest Park, and that is 6-ppd. That said, as a forever PR storyteller, because you can't always leave a prior profession you first encountered straight out of undergrad, I confidently am standing here today to make a recommendation, which is to positively and encouragely and confidently share that if not already considered, there is a great advantage in hiring on and bringing on a PR agency or a PR executive to come on and bring the city of Lake Forest Park as a pro bono client. That's primarily and principally to inform, educate, and inspire, and ultimately generate awareness. While researching more about 6-ppd and the impact it's having on coho salmon in our creeks here in the city, I really didn't find much of a scientific headline kind of search in my research, and it really made me think as we think about our macro political and social climate, we can all agree that more than ever, our next generations and the generations to come are incredibly active in advocacy. And we all know how much having the right information on the World Wide Web is beneficial to people and learning, and how much word of mouth spreads in informing people. And so in my own research of what exactly is happening here at Lion and McClear Creeks, I also realized some more scientific studies, which is that the University of Vienna in Switzerland is researching how wastewater and sewage sludge is showing initial low toxic numbers of 6-PPD toxicity in leafy vegetables. So I mentioned I'm pursuing a career in dietetics, and here I am advocating for us to grow and harvest our vegetables and consume them, and yet they're already spreading in our food, just like they're spreading into the bodies of coho. So it made me question, like, while I'm not fully surprised, I am shocked, because if we think about this at a macro perspective, what is not to say that we aren't actually interacting with this chemical on creeks we are walking on, our children are licking, and in terms of soil, and just whether we're rolling or walking or strolling, we are in some way interacting with this toxic chemical. And it makes me think about, what about our respiratory systems as well? Are we breathing in this? Are we further damaging our bodies, that we need to continue to advocate for a change in eliminating this toxic waste? So as several of my classmates and peers have already boldly and confidently shared with you today, it is very important that we consider so many ways that we could work together as a community. And specifically, my recommendation to you all today is, again, to hire or work with a communications consultant who can help to raise a campaign around this. Because as mentioned by the University of Vienna, there is, even though the city of Lake Forest Park is a smaller population, there are definitely macro considerations to consider here. And that said, I urge the city of Lake Forest Park to adopt the task force request for a climate and sustainability position by and for the city. And as I mentioned, I'm a student and I'm learning about this. And I know that I hope my intention here is to say that we all have so much to learn. And in teaching each other this awareness, I want to make sure I also thank my professor who's taught me and brought me this into my attention. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known. And I really want to just be a voice for our marine life and each other.
Great. Thank you very much, Lotus. Thank you very much. Excuse me. I believe is this Gina? Is that correct? Welcome.
Hello. My name is Gina Nesbitt, and I'm another one of the students coming from North Seattle Community College. In my chemistry class, we've been learning some science that relates to salmon recovery in Lion and McAleer Creeks. Today, I specifically wanted to discuss climate impacts from rising temperature on our salmon, as warming waters will decimate the salmon populations if we let it. Now, this next part gets a little chemistry, but I will explain it a little more clearly at the end. A key law in chemistry, Henry's law, has found there's a relationship between the solubility of a gas and temperature. This is due to a constant in the solubility equation, Kh, which depends on the temperature. As temperature increases, Kh decreases. Since this constant is then multiplied to find solubility, a smaller Kh will result in less solubility. Just to explain that more clearly, as a liquid's temperature increases, less gas can dissolve in it. And this is significant because O2 must first dissolve into lakes and oceans for our fish to breathe. If the water cannot dissolve as much oxygen, there will be unsatisfactory oxygen levels for salmon, which will kill them. Salmon are particularly vulnerable because a key part of their life cycles involves a challenging upriver journey to return to their birthplace to reproduce. Just as strenuous sports become harder for humans at higher altitudes, that challenging swim becomes impossible for salmon with limited oxygen. Growing up in the Seattle public school system, the importance of salmon to Indigenous populations and Seattle in general has been highlighted year after year. A key memory from my elementary school experience is raising salmon from eggs to fry before releasing them through the Salmon in Schools program. This program currently reaches about 70 public and private schools a year, which is a fair number, but considering there are 150 just public elementary schools in Seattle, efforts need to be made to increase the program's reach. Although Salmon in Schools offers financial support for the program, schools still must sign up for it themselves. Knowing it exists and feeling like it's an available resource is a privilege. Supporting the spread of this program helps more children to care for our natural world and salmon in particular. Also, incorporating opportunities to help create and maintain shade-offering green spaces around our rivers that will keep the waters cooler could be a beneficial way to educate youth on the importance of salmon, as well as also keep the salmon's habitats hospitable. Community efforts could also be rallied towards larger restorative volunteer efforts. Focusing on building these protective ecosystems around our rivers currently looks like the most effective strategy towards protecting our salmon. It will take funding as well as research into what would be the ideal shading vegetation, but our salmon are worth it. They are a critical part of the Pacific Northwest culture and a necessary component of Washington's food chain, supporting not just us, but marine animals, birds, and orca populations. Losing them to extinction is an unnecessary and harmful loss. While efforts are being made to address climate change on a larger scale, we need to make smaller scale efforts to protect our salmon through these rising temperatures. I ask that we increase funding towards the protection and slow down this process now before things get too far along. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Gina. Well done. Next we have Marla. Please.
I'm getting such a kick out of this because I'm a marine biologist, but I'm here to speak on behalf of the museum. And I'm finding that these two groups are actually quite connected. I came here not planning to speak, but I put my name on the list, and now I know I want to because I'm so excited to see all these young people, and so excited about the climate conditions. I worked at the aquarium for about almost 40 years, and I've lived in the city of Shoreline for almost 40 years, and I have had many hats on since I retired. I volunteer for the Parks Department for the city of Shoreline as a native plant steward, putting in trees and trying to restore the stream habitat at Brugger's Bog, which is just up the road here in Bellinger Way, and it's part of the Lions Creek watershed. And when we were working there, started off in about 2017, if you haven't been to that park, it's just up the road. It's actually the city of Shoreline, but I don't think of some of these areas of having a boundary between Mount Lake Terrace, the city of Shoreline, or the city of Lake Forest Park, because as far as watersheds and streams, they go through all different, like Metcalere Creek and Lions Creek and Brugger's Creek. They go through all the different incorporations here in cities. But when we were first working there, we wanted to have a little bit of history about the area. And when we were doing the restoration work, because Brugger's Bog is actually a bog, so it has peat. So peat was actually harvested there. And we went to the Shoreline Historical Museum to look up photos to find out aerial photographs that were taken many, many years ago to find out what it looked like. Many, many years ago, back, I think around 1940 or 1930, something like that. I'm not too sure. I didn't come prepared with dates, but we used the museum quite a bit to get data historically, because that's very valuable to know where we're going and what the future is. We also looked at the maps that are there on the wall, even in our office. In an office space, there's a map that shows represents what the Duwamish and the native indigenous people did here as far as having some fires to controlled fires that they routinely did. And many peoples do that across the world to bring in the berries and create food for themselves. So even when I first retired and was part of the neighborhood board of association in the city of Shoreline, I went to the museum quite a few times to find out history that was going on in the area. So it's all connected, whether you're studying nature or climate change or looking up the name of the person who owns your house and trying to find some photographs. So I'm here actually supporting the Shoreline Historical Museum, and I hope that you'll consider helping them out a little bit. And I'm a volunteer there. I'm the lead steward for the forest there at the Miyawaki Forest. So thank you.
Thank you, Marla. I think we've gotten to the bottom of the list. Is there anyone else here that would like to make public comment? Welcome. Please join us.
Hi, my name is Percy. I am also a North Seattle College student. I will try not to be too repetitive. I've been involved in local watershed research and habitat restoration for a few years now. I was part of the Edmond Stream team, which works with USGS, Edmond City Council, WashDOT, Sound and Salmon Solutions, trying to restore native salmon and habitat loss over in Edmonds. And I also spent the last 6 months working on a research project that I recently presented at UW about water quality, specifically nitrogen in greater Seattle watersheds. In that research, I found that Lion and McAleer Creeks, sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right, not doing so well. Out of 48 river and stream sites that I had data from, Lion Creek was one of 4 that was above 1 milligram per liter of nitrogen. It was about 1.2 and McAleer was 0.8, which for reference EPA criteria is 0.3 milligrams per liter. So 3 to 4 times the recommended amount. Excess nitrogen is usually a sign of runoff pollution. Things like fertilizers, chemical waste, sewage, vehicle exhaust. And it can cause a lot of problems for wildlife, but one thing that you might want to be a little bit more concerned about is over 1 milligram per liter, it can start to bind to red blood cells, and the higher the concentration gets, the more it affects your body's ability to carry oxygen. Not to say don't drink the tap water, maybe don't drink the stream water, but it is to say that, you know, not something we should ignore, because if it does get worse, it can start leaching into drinking water and putting especially kids at risk. And I know on a local government scale, it can be really difficult to implement solutions that require like completely redoing infrastructure, but something that is a lot more doable and also could create opportunities for community involvement is planting kind of stormwater buffers along major roads. This can literally just be a very absorptive soil and pollution tolerant plants. And it won't get rid of the problem, but it will greatly reduce the amount of pollution from roads that is getting into streams. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in council chambers that would like to make public comment, even if you didn't sign up, you're welcome to join us. Okay, with that, we'll close public comment. I do want to give a shout out to your instructor, Brian Saunders, who's online right now. Hello, Brian. Thanks for all the work you do. You sure have done a great job with your students and Heather Price's students. Oh, so, unless no. She's just. Oh, Heather, would you like to speak? No. Okay. Okay. We're all friends here. Yeah, well, thank you, Heather, for being with us. And it does give us a lot of hope for the future. So we have a lot of talented folks out there that are learning and educating us about things.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I just wanted to note for the record that the council had received written comments from Barry Hansen in support of the Shoreline Historical Museum and Bob and Dana Brocht regarding efforts to minimize power outages.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. Always appreciate the written comments as well. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to proclamations, and I've asked Councilmember Riddle to read us the proclamation on Juneteenth for 2024. Councilmember Riddle.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas on January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, setting in motion the end of slavery in the United States. And whereas the end of the Civil War began with the surrender of General Lee at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9th, 1865, and ended with the final terms of surrender of the last Confederate general on June 2nd, 1865. And while this news reached Texas, when Union Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston Bay with his troops, it was on June 19th, 1865, that he announced, "The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free." And whereas celebration of the end of slavery reaching the furthest Union state, which became known as Juneteenth, is one of the oldest public celebrations of the end of slavery in the United States. And whereas Juneteenth celebrations spread across many southern states and more with the movement of freed Texas slaves as they exercised their newfound freedoms in search of family and new lives. And whereas the first Juneteenth celebrations brought friends and families together, often on emancipated land, the first to be owned by former enslaved people, and included inspirational speakers, reading of the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, food, stories from former enslaved people. And whereas Juneteenth Juneteenth commemorates the complete emancipation of Confederate slaves, and June 19th was declared Emancipation Day in Texas in 1980. And whereas on a larger scale, celebration of Juneteenth reminds us of the precious promises of freedom, equality, and opportunity, which are at the core of America. Now, therefore, the mayor and the city council of the city of Lake Forest Park do hereby proclaim June 19th as a day to celebrate Juneteenth in 2024 in the city of Lake Forest Park.
Thank you, council member. Let's see, we're moving on to presentations. Request for funding from the Shoreline Historical Museum. Kenneth is going to be joining us. Hi, Kenneth. Nice to see you again.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very, very much for having me. Thank you, council members, mayor, Lake Forest Park community, and others who are here today on Duwamish land. Very, very grateful for this opportunity to talk to everybody. And in particular, I am grateful for the people of the Lake Forest Park community who have really encouraged me to come out and speak. It would not be for many people who are part of the council and many people who are in this room. They are the reason that I am here today. And to speak, I'm really going to speak in the only way that I know how, through intentional engagement with people. And so you all saw that there were some little cards that were on your tables when you come in. If you want to just hold up the cards for everybody to see. So somebody in the council, what's something that you notice on the cards?
Colleagues?
Be prepared, everybody. This road here, engagement is your next area.
Councilmember Riddle.
I have a school and the community and coming together, and
Cool.
the whole community at one place.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. What else? What's something else that you notice?
Stream.
The stream.
Yeah.
And you know where that is? That's Sheridan Beach.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Who's got the Wordeman Mansion?
Oh my gosh.
Wordeman Mansion.
Yeah.
Who's familiar with the Wordeman
1911.
Mansion?
Yeah.
We got a number of people familiar with the Wordeman Mansion. That is a particularly significant spot and a particularly significant photo. Because one of the things that photo highlights is something that we've been talking about here today, the effects of climate change and the effects on humans of the natural environment. That photo was taken in 1915, 1 year before the canal was created between Lake Washington and Puget Sound, which forever significantly affected the water levels, and something that many of the chemistry students have been talking about, the temperature of these waters and how that affects salmon. For the folks that are sitting right over here, can you take a look at these photos that are behind you right there? Does anybody want to read what any of them says, what one of the plaques says? A wood bridge over Ballinger Creek. What about the last things after what it says? What are the three letters that are there? SHM. Is SHM? All right, y'all see where I'm going with this.
Well done.
Are those three letters that everybody sees? Take a look at those photos that are right there. It's pretty consistent. Shoreline Historical Museum. That is what I am here to talk about today. Again, with the encouragement of so many people in this room. Since 1976, the mission of the Shoreline Historical Museum has really been to preserve and educate about the histories of North Seattle, Shoreline, and Lake Forest Park. And the archives and the collections are things that you have already seen. These photos that you have, and that framed photo, which please make sure you don't forget that I get back, because that is part of our archives, that is part of our collections. These are all ways that we are able to make sense of not only our past, but the existences that we live in today, the realities that we had. And many of those realities are things that other people have commented on today. So in these cards, we not only have these images from our archives, from our collections, but if you open it up, there's also a list of ways that the Lake Forest Park community and the museum community connect with each other. And this is another opportunity for some interactions. I'm going to go ahead and list off some of these things. And if you've been to one of these, if you've participated, go ahead and raise your hand. Who here? Okay, Tracy, you're getting ahead of it. That's great though. I love it. I love it. I'll start with some of the really big ones. The Miyawaki Forest. Who here has participated in some Miyawaki Forest event? It's incredible. Thank you all. What about the Sorry, what about the people who are involved with the manuscript for the First Peoples that people are working on? We got a number of people who have been a part of that. We have been invited this year in particular to the farmers markets. We're signed up for 2 farmers markets events here in Lake Forest Park. We were invited to participate in the Secret Garden Tour this year, and so we will have a table over at the Commons. Walking tours that we've done here. We collaborated with Ken Workman of the Duwamish tribe, David Berge, local historian, and other community members to lead walks in the Lions Creek area, highlighting Duwamish existence in that area. Who here was at our annual meeting at the Sheridan Market? We got a few people who were there. We have displays that we have hosted both in Lake Forest Park at Third Place Commons and at the museum. Did anybody see the 60-year anniversary display that was going on? This was just a little bit before I came on, but a few years ago, this was something that was displayed throughout our communities. In the programs that we do here, who here has been to any of the library programs? What about the Miyawaki Forest programs that Sally Yamasaki and Sarah Phillips did? We got a number of people who were at that. Last year, we had David Berge come to the Lake Forest Park Library branch and talk about his findings in his presentation, Resurgence, talking about the intersection of contemporary Duwamish existence and the natural world as we see it today. So there are a number of ways. And what we have on these cards right here are really just a reflection of the things that I have seen and I have gotten to be a part of in the 3 years, to say nothing of the almost 50 years before me coming on in the fall of 2021, that the Lake Forest Park community and the museum community have been connected. And there are so many ways in which we can see this connectivity. In a survey that we did in 2023, we had the highest number of respondents, about 22% from the 98155 zip code. And that is significant because, of course, that 98155 zip code includes Shoreline, but also includes Lake Forest Park. And this was a really striking number to see the number of people from that zip code that were coming to museum events and engaging with us at these various outreach things that we were doing. This is no more evident, this level of engagement, than through the people from Lake Forest Park that are so heavily engaged. We've had a number of people raise their hands about the events, about the programs, about the projects that are going on. And in particular, I want to highlight the Miyawaki Forest project that really was spearheaded, that really was done with a driving force from some of the members that are with us in this room today. To say nothing about the other volunteers that have participated about this. And in 2024 alone, we have hundreds of hours of volunteer time from Lake Forest Park residents. For our community museum to continue and thrive, however, we seek additional forms of revenue to secure our future. And this has never been more important than it is today. At the beginning of this week, we welcomed our second full-time employee in the entire museum's history. Our new collections manager, Robbie Grillo, will finally be able to unpack objects, many of which have been in boxes for a decade since the move that we made in 2011. This will allow us to finally change exhibits and expand our collections to better address the realities and needs of the communities of which we are a part. As we approach our 50th anniversary in 2025, and as we reassess our strategic plan and institutional identity, now is the time to invest in our local history. Our operating budget of about $140,000 a year pays for the director position and also for the essential needs keeping the doors open and the lights on. While we have some really, really wonderful increases in that money through grants with the King Conservation District, and the restricted funds that people have given us in support of the Miyawaki Forest, the First People manuscript, and other things, it is also important for us to seek funds that can be used for our general operating expenses. This year, as you review your upcoming budget, we respectfully ask that you consider allocating funds to the Shoreline Historical Museum. As evidenced by the longstanding contract that we have with the City of Shoreline, the funds that we receive ensure that we develop exhibits, programs, and community events that benefit all. Over the past several years, the City of Shoreline allocates about 0.04% of their budget to support the museum, which comes to around $60,000 annually, almost half of our general operating budget. I would urge this council and mayor to consider a proportionate amount to the city of Lake Forest Park's budget. The financial support that we might gain from this relationship and clear ways that the museum can be more specifically involved with the city of Lake Forest Park would provide long-lasting, sustainable support for all communities. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Kenneth. Wonderful.
Can I get that framed?
I'm trying to place the time frame on this photo because this is the Lake Forest Park Mercantile Company, and before that it was Wogwim's General Store, and before that it was a bus stop. So I'm not sure what year this was. Yeah, 1945. Thank you. There you go. So fascinating history. And with that, we're moving on to the schematic design report for the Phase 1 Lakefront improvements. Corey Roche is joining us with Amber.
So I have Amber here getting summarizing the schematic design of the concept for the Lakefront Park project. And I just want to state that we went into contract a year ago in July. So it's been a fun year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Please.
All right. Thank you to the council and the mayor for your time today, both at the earlier working session and now. So as Corey mentioned, we've been working together for a year. About a year ago, the city hired DCG Watershed, formerly David O Consulting Group and the Watershed Company. We have since rebranded as Facet Northwest. So I'm here presenting to you today from them, us. Okay. So as she mentioned, I've been the project manager for this project, been working with the city through the scope of Phase 1 of this design, which we understood to be starting at concept, what shall we do, and then ending with schematic design. So where we want to go. So this is really the milestone that allows us to say, here's what it would take to get there. And that's what's presented to the council in the booklets. This is also available for the public to see on the project website, which is lfplakefrontpark.com. Okay, so here's our schedule. So this is the last of 7 official meetings that I've provided for both the Parks and Rec Board and for the City Council. So this concludes our presentations to the City Council for Phase 1. So our final PM meeting, as we mentioned earlier, is the end of this month, and then that really wraps up our contract for this Phase 1 work. So we received a notice to proceed in July. We went through an extensive pre-design effort, which included data collection, site analysis, and early engagement. So letting the public understand that a project was happening and finding out ways that the city might want to be engaged. We then went into a concept design effort that was from October to January in 2024. So October 2023, January 2024, where we went through design programming and alternatives feasibility. So this was really talking to the community, using that engagement that we had received through public workshops, through surveys, and then laying out a design, going through what were some potential options and alternatives, and then how did those look actually on the park site. So that was earlier this year, January to March. And then once the final preferred design was selected, we got into the schematic design phase. So we've been in schematic design from March to June. We have gone through exercises like refining the design based on additional input, meeting with the council, meeting with the Parks Board, working extensively with city staff, Corey foremost, on what that design looks like in the context of the city's funding, the city's timeline, and then making sure that that's always rooted in the community engagement and feedback that we went through and heard at the beginning of this project. So the final design, schematic design package really represents that, milestone marking and documenting the work that went into Phase 1. So it is not every document that we compiled, although that is available on the website, but it really is the summation of that and represents that next step. So where do we want to go based on all of the work that we've done, the studies that have happened, the conversations, the community feedback is represented in that packet. So it is not It is not the plan for developing the park, it is the vision for starting to develop the plans. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and that would be represented mostly in phase 2, which we described with the scope provided to the council earlier at the working session. Okay, so here I am, 4th time that I've been to council. I'm going to provide an update on that phase 1 project. On the side of phase 1, we are also doing what we're calling early works demolition. So the city has funding to complete some selective site demolition, removal of hazmat materials, lead paint, structure abatement, those sort of things on the property that the city acquired for the redevelopment into a public park. That funding expires, and so we are working to make sure that that happens on time and that the city can take advantage of those funds while they are available. And then the next stage of this work continuing forward would be that design development phase, which would represent the beginning of phase 2. Okay, so our progress report. An update on some funding. So we heard early on from the council that funding was really important in terms of setting the community and the city up for what this may look like. That is in terms of upfront initial costs as well as sustained maintenance obligations, wanting to make sure that the design that we ended phase 1 with was right scale from a funding perspective. And so we have looked at what grants can we apply for? What are the probability of getting those? What's the competitiveness of funding? We found some that are pretty competitive, some that are less so. But we have, priced this project conservatively. So ask big and then concede from down from that if you need to. So that was another thing that we needed to get through for the schematic design. In order to ask for enough money to buy this park, we needed to know what the park was going to be and how much it could cost. And so we have gotten there. So working with Corey, we knew starting this project back last July that those funding applications were due on May 1. And so we knew that we needed to get there. And that was the main driver for accelerating this work and staying on a schedule, which we did manage to do. We made that deadline with a cost estimate and a complete outlook on what the design might be. So that is a funding deadline for everyone else that only comes every 2 years. And so it isn't like, oh, we missed it, go next year. It's we missed it, and then you have to wait 2 years again. So we applied for the WWRP, which is the Water Access Program, and then the Aquatic Lands Enhancement Program. Our technical presentations have been completed. We've gotten initial feedback from RCO. We'll get more extensive feedback from our grant manager, and then the final presentations for that program will occur in August. Shortly thereafter, we'll find if the city has qualified for that funding. Or not qualified for the funding, but received that funding. So our final schematic design package, we've provided to you the report and the renderings. We did share an early draft of this with the council to get some additional feedback on some other items or key information that you would like included. So that's included in this final report. And then we also provided the scope and fee proposal based on what's presented in the schematic design to extend the project to phase 2. Okay, so our early works work. So the other project, phase 1, July to June. This is really a March to December timeline. So the funding from RCO expires on November 30th. And so we need to make sure that any work that is qualifying for that program happens before November 30th so that the city can be fully reimbursed for those costs. So since I last gave you an update, we have completed the bid documents. Those have been submitted to the city. They're in city review. We've received some preliminary review back from the city attorney and others. And then now we're kind of getting the last bit of information that we need. We know based on the scope of work and the anticipated cost of the project that we should be able to procure this work through the city's small works roster. And so that is the path that we're hoping to take. So we've actually gained some time back in the schedule. If it were to go to a competitive bid process, that takes a little bit longer in terms of the bid period, bid review, contracting, et cetera. So, so good news there in terms of a schedule gain. Our next steps are to finalize those documents, go through the bid solicitation from small works roster process, and then get that going. So we will be coming back to council with a scope for, this is the contractor that the city would like to select. Corey will be here for that. And so just so you know, that's coming. And then the construction work again will start immediately, and then we'll need to conclude prior to November 30th. Okay, so our schematic design package. So this summarizes the product of the phase 1 design. It does present a vision for phase two, but not the concept. So this would be our goals to start exploring those from a design specifications level. And then it also provides an overview of some of those critical issues that will come up in design. So we know that this is a heavily regulated environment. We know that it is of interest to many, many people. It does have a salmon bearing stream, Lion Creek, which we heard a lot about today. So there's a lot of eyes on this project for many reasons. And those are definitely things that if we're not foreshadowing that in our representation of what's possible or what's feasible at this park or what that might entail, we're doing a disservice. So a lot of that is written in this report and has been communicated to the council and city staff through this process. So the key parts of the schematic design, we are actually going through the presentation of the design. There's a lot in there about visitor experience and considerations. And then there is the implementation summary. So the implementation summary is the cost estimate. Again, we wanted to say, what are all the things we think we could include so that we can ask for enough money to include them. That does not mean that we have made a commitment to put those in. For example, one of the things that was discussed as a maybe was solar panels. From what we can tell, the roofs on the house of this project have good sun exposure. And so solar panels may be something that the city wants to include. Solar panels is also something that we're seeing many more grants for, which is a good thing. But just because they're in this report does not mean that they are definitely an expense that the city has to spend. Again, we'll be presenting more of that flexibility and those options as the design moves forward. Okay. So this is the site plan. So this is the product of all of those design exercises. So the program that the community members advocated for, we heard, lots of concerns about the encroachment of development on Lion Creek and the desire to give more space to the creek and its buffer. And so what this represents over the current existing condition is actually less development, a bigger, more expansive restored buffer. We're kind of retreating everything back from the creek to give it some breathing room and then to provide a space that provides for recreational amenities, passive recreation that's in scale of this property and in scale of the community need and in scale of the natural resources that are also present and in dire need of this property. So the viewpoints here, I'm just going to kind of work from left to right as you approach the park and then as you work your way out to the water. So currently the access and approach from Beach Drive does not have a sidewalk. So a sidewalk is being proposed as part of the project. So this is an early rendering. I think it's actually unlikely that it will have 2 yellow lines in it, but that's one of those things that our traffic engineer will complete all of the studies and traffic stuff for that. So anyway, here we are with the sidewalk. You can see its approximate location. So this is currently the roughly visual of the park showing the mature trees that are there, the access road, the existing Lion Creek. So this is the small existing parking area that shows, that includes the ADA space and provides the maintenance access to the straight path that goes out to the current viewing dock that's there. So the goal of this project, because we understand the complexities and concerns about not just regulatory permitting, but also, the need to do the right thing from an environmental standpoint on this property in particular. We're at the very bottom of the watershed. We're at the confluence of the creek and the lake, and the need to be thinking very strategically and very carefully about what would be the smart thing to do. So in lieu of adding a lot of new pavements, the design does things like look at paved areas and developed areas, where are roofs and pavements currently, and then making use to keep those as a key part of the design so that we're focusing, pavement and hard surfaces where they already are, and then trying to pull those out to the extent that we can, when we're closer to the creek especially, but then as we're fanning out from there as well. So the goal is to, consolidate cost by doing things like not moving the power pole that is in this current island, kind of creating an island to hold it, and then keeping the mature trees that are also really important for things like heat reduction, for things like air quality, and, lend themselves to the culture and aesthetic of the community as well. So stepping into the park, this would really be the pedestrian entrance. We love about this design that the pedestrian entrance comes before the vehicular entrance. This is a community of active people who are on walks all the time. There's a major regional facility trail that runs through this area that this park is going to be conveniently located to, so that, on foot, on wheels, bike wheels, approach to this park was one that we felt like was really critically important, and then allowing the people in a vehicle to kind of come second to their arrival. So in this case, what you can see in this frame is to your right-hand side is what is effectively the inside of the preserve. So again, we're on the right side of what is currently the approach, the vehicular pull into Lion Creek, and revising that to be a continuation of the sidewalk onto a path surface that's accessible, which was also something that we heard as a key community concern. So what you're seeing in the background of this picture are the existing structures, what we have been calling Cabin 6 and what we've been calling the main house as part of this project. So these are two of the existing historical, not historic structures that are located on the site based on the historic structures inventory research that our architects did. Our architects on the team are specialists in adaptive reuse and working with these old structures. And so again, it was looking for what are the right candidates, what can provide for what are we not obligated by the grant funding to tear down was also a big consideration, but what is smart and feasible and leaves a right size recreational amenity for the community, and what can address best community needs. So this is pulling into the parking area and looking at what the facility will be. So I can tell from the lighting here that this isn't super clear, but they're basically on the site of one of the former cabins where there was a roof and pavement. We are proposing to include basically a staging area. So this would be a place where people can drop off things like kayaks. It'll have an air pump for people to air up things. They can set things down. You can seat, you can stage, and then they can pull the car off to park at the City Hall parking lot, which is where the current parking for the Lion Creek Waterfront Preserve exists. So this, we're hoping, will address some of the traffic and queuing concerns that the community was very specific and passionate about. And we understand that a main part of this park is it going to work for the context of, its current location? Is it going to work for the behavioral, trends in the neighborhood, which do favor walking and biking? But obviously, when you're providing an accessible park, you are expecting some people to need to arrive by vehicle. And based on the uses that we're assuming and based on the population that we're serving, we feel like the park has achieved balance in terms of providing for both load and unload zones, convenient circulation, and accessible parking. So this is kind of looking back towards the main house. So what is currently the garage, which has some hazmat issues, has been reusing that footprint, although making it about half the size and renovating that into a family style, so non-gendered restroom, 4 stalls, functioning as the park's bathhouse. So this will be a swimming bathing beach, which means that a bathhouse will be required, and very smart in terms of the program. And so this is a great location where it can serve people coming into the park. It's conveniently located kind of right on the boundary between the existing Lion Creek Waterfront Park and the new park. And so we also see this as a place where trail users, whether arriving from a water trail on the lake or arriving on a bike or walk on the Maltese Trail, can also stop here and know that this is a place where you can have a little bit of a way station to fill a water bottle, use the restroom, and then get back on the way. Okay, so this is kind of continuing down that pedestrian path where you are, the right side is the restored creek buffer protected by split rail fencing. So a wildlife friendly fencing still allows for small mammal movement, but does not, it's a clear symbol to people that we're not supposed to go that way, but the animals can't tell. So we see the bathhouse on the left, and then you see straight ahead an accessible ramp that provides a path up to the renovated deck that is currently on the main house that would be renovated to be a public gathering space for picnicking that also provides a view of the lake. So here we have one of the viewing platforms in the renovated or in the restored creek buffer. So what we heard from many community members is that they love the experience of sitting in quiet, immersed in nature in the waterfront preserve. So currently there is a bench or two that are pretty darn close to the creek, and then there is one dock with one bench at the end of it. And we heard a lot of people say, I'd love to sit on the end of the dock, but you can kind of see, and if it's used, then you just wait or you move on. And so we wanted to make sure that the main experience that we were providing in the preserve was one that was in context with the sensitivity of the resource. So set back a little bit, but also providing for that favorite thing, sitting quietly in nature under a canopy of trees, listening to the creek, listening to the water, and not necessarily needing to get into it, because that buffer is really specifically needed for a creek that is impacted by, urban conditions like Lion Creek is. So here we are up on that renovated deck to the main house. So the main house will be programmed separately. So the city is in need of flexible community space. So that is the intent currently for that big house structure. But we felt like there was a need, and the community spoke about this big house as being part of something that they wanted to experience. And so to provide a public experience to the big house, that experience of sitting on the deck and really looking out at this gorgeous view of Lake Washington is a really pretty stellar experience that we felt like should be an equitable one. And so the deck is open, it's got accessible ramps, and it provides this great view across a play area, through those existing mature trees that are being saved, and then out to the beach and water. So this is a view basically on the other side of that island that holds the play structure, looking back at that deck. So you can see actually the solar panel array that would be proposed on those water facing parts of the roof. Here are some visuals showing the potential programming for the interior of the structure. So currently that main house structure is 2-story. In looking at the potential to renovate and keep those 2 stories, we were faced with the situation of losing space to what would be necessary in order to provide something fully accessible. So much higher cost, less usable space, and sort of a separate experience of elevator, lift versus stairs. And so in looking through that and hearing the community's concern about the need to provide an open, flexible space that was equitable, the design team made the recommendation to the council and to the Parks and Rec Board that the 2nd story would be removed, which allows for more open space. It allows for the ceiling to be vaulted. It creates a really nice, beautiful space, and is also an accessible one. So the lower picture actually shows the side of that cabin 6 building. So this again would be a flexible space. So a flexible space that the city can decide to operate how it wants. The current discussion has been extra office space, like overflow office. The community policing office was something that was mentioned as a potential kind of resident there, which also provides a security and groundskeeping sort of function, having eyes on the park. And knowing that that cabin right now is pretty close to the cabin next to it and has just a completely lead painted panel wall, the idea to open it up and get that view through and to the water and to the park interior earlier is part of the reason that that is proposed to be opened. Okay, so there is one small cabin that has some substantial mold and hazmat issues that we are proposing to keep the footprint, but to make it an open picnic shelter and to provide that as an experience that, the community members can use as part of their park experience. So whether it's staying out of the shade, using some picnic tables, coming out of the rain, having birthday parties, just getting together impromptu, or just another really nice place to sit near the water. That's what's being shown in this picture. So further down that accessible path from the parking area is this new dock. So we're proposing a dock to replace the current 2 existing. So the one at the Lion Creek Waterfront Preserve is very close to the creek. It was built to sort of old standards, so it doesn't have things like graded decking, which allow dappled sunlight to come down into the edge environment of the lake. It also does not provide for water access, so you're not allowed to get off that dock. It's for viewing only. It's also started to bend and buckle a little bit with the encroaching birch trees that are coming in. So then further down on the new acquisition property, we have another dock that was built to very old standards. So it's got things like creosote and some of these other issues. It also has armoring that hold up the armoring right at the shoreline that holds up the entry to that dock. That dock is not safe and does need to come down. And so the decision, working through lots of these design exercises, was that a smart thing to still meet community need would be to remove the 2 docks built for other purposes to other standards, consolidate into one using best practices for salmon safe construction, and to propose that completely off of the waterfront preserve property. So this effectively moves the dock away from the creek mouth. I think it's an additional 30 or 40 feet. I don't remember what it is, over that property line, so that the only piece that kind of is still on the preserved property is a small viewing platform, which you can see on the right side of this image. So this is an image from the water. You can see that there is a separate swim platform that will allow, again, for swimming, which will be one of the main uses of this park: swimming, wading, paddling, just being by the water, having public equitable access to the lake, which was the grant goal and the reason that the city acquired the project in the first place, or acquired the property in the first place. Okay, so the cost estimate. So again, this is a planning level cost estimate. This is based on everything we could want to leave us with flexibility to ask for enough funding and to rein it down as we work through the design process. So we tried to think about what could come up to provide the most best information to the council. So one of the things that came up was the potential need for geotechnical reinforcement of the existing structures. That is definitely something that we don't want to forget about or don't want to learn later after we have asked for money and it not be enough. Another thing was things like utilities. So currently the site is served by utilities. All of the structures have utilities, but based on some of the conversations that we had with other parks departments who have done recent projects, and then looking at, what tends to come up when we're talking to utility districts, this price includes things like a full replacement of all of those. The hope is that working through this process and through detailed design, we will learn that some of the utilities can be reused. Maybe not all of the geotechnical reinforcement is going to be necessary, but again, we wanted to provide the information that set up a realistic picture for what might be next. So one other thing about that. So this includes a construction cost, but then also what we would call a full project cost. So the full project cost is using just industry standard formulas. Mark this up 10% for that, mark this up 15% for that, for things like permit fees, paying consultants like us, doing things like, paying city staff, all of those other things. So when you see the difference between these two numbers, the number on the right includes time that has already been spent, money that has already been paid. So for example, the early works, demolition work that's happening, that is represented within this total project cost because it is related to this work and that's already been offset by some RCO funding. Corey's staff time in the years spent up to this project, that's also represented in that number, as are the fees that you've paid to companies like mine, and then the fee request that we put in for continuation to phase 2. Okay, so a phasing plan. So it is possible that this work may need to be phased. And there are many reasons why you might do that. You might do it based on when permits are issued, when target dates are to open a park, when funding is received, or when work is allowed. There's also advantageous ways to stage work. You wouldn't necessarily paint, or you wouldn't put in carpet before you paint, you do it the other way around because it makes more sense so you don't ruin the carpet, those types of things. So we go through lots of exercises on how this can be structured together and then have laid out these as one potential way that this project could be phased. Obviously, it could be phased numerous different ways. This is one, and you can see in the notes in this frame that are much larger and easier to read in the packets that you guys have about some of the considerations and some of those dates. One of the key dates, because of the environment that we're working in, is the in-water work window. And this is based on salmon life cycle and habits and behaviors in this part of the lake shoreline. So we know that there are basically two preferred or two, allowed windows of when we're allowed to be in the water on this parcel for things like construction. So there is an in-water work window in the summer that's very short, it's about 2 weeks. And then there was a much longer one. There's two. We're lucky enough to get two. Most places on the lake only get one window, but we have a longer window in the winter. And so those things are accounted for in the schedule in terms of being in the water and then having to be out for nearly a year before you can get in the water again. Okay, so phase 1 closeout. So we have completed this project on schedule for a year, which is pretty fun. So in terms of being on budget, we did have a number of what we call technical reserves. So these are, if a technical specialty is needed, then we can access that reserve funding to pay for that technical professional. So based on the work that we did in phase 1, we did not need geotechnical investigation extensively for this phase. And so we did not access that reserve. So that technical reserve of $5K for geotechnical services carries over to the second phase of the project, should the city continue with us. So we did go over budget. We had to repeat a site visit early on in the project. This was just coming out thinking that we could get, you know, all of the trees, the wetland delineation, the stream delineation done in a certain amount of time, had to come back a second day. And then there was, we did go over in terms of our effort in concept design, but this is an NTE contract, so that is not an expense that goes to the city, and ultimately you will get back the 5K. So, but to be honest, that's what I'm here to do, on schedule, very close to budget, but slightly over. Okay. So phase 1 deliverables. I'm making this presentation to you guys today, which is the 7th of 7 official meetings that we've provided under this contract. And our final biweekly meeting with Corey, which we've been doing for a year now. That one will occur just a couple weeks from now on the 27th. And then basically the first week of July, just ahead of the holiday, you guys will get the final progress report and final schedule outlook for this project. So that is going to show that we have closed out the phase 1 work, but that there's a bunch of early works stuff still happening. And then it will have a look ahead of what the anticipated schedule for phase 2 would be. So there were some questions about what work may occur before the end of the year. That progress report in that schedule provides a really, you know, specific laid out of, you know, if we go through the end of 2024, here's where we'll be in terms of documentation and deliverables that the city will have on hand. So the next steps are that phase 2. So phase 2 contract consideration, that scope and fee represents the snapshot that's in the schematic design. We also are participating in the final presentations to RCO. So we filed $5 million, $5.5 million grant applications. So that was the early request. There'll probably be some coordination with the grant manager to refine that number. But that is the request that's in, and those final presentations are scheduled for late August. And then we'll be continuing with the early works demolition. So that's a separate, smaller contract on this, still within that full project cost number, but just separate from this agreement. That will go through basically the end of the year because the funding expires in November. So the last progress report on that one will come in December. And then right now, the next step is really the transition from project phase 1 to phase 2. So we'll probably have a lull in our biweekly meetings, but if the council decides to authorize part or all of the phase 2 scope, those would pick back up and just continue for the duration of that subsequent phase. Okay. So the next steps, here's some dates based on that look ahead schedule in terms of phase 2 milestones. And all of these dates are TBD. This is just a slide that we have kind of shown in each of these updates. So here it is again. And here we are. Questions and discussion.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Colleagues, questions for Amber or Corey? Let's start with Deputy Mayor Bodie and then on to Councilmember Reports.
I don't, excuse me, I don't really have a question. I wanted to say as a council liaison to the Parks and Recreation Board and someone who's been involved in this along the way, I want to say I really appreciate the quality of the work, the interdisciplinary nature of the work, and of course, being on time and on budget. Meeting that grant application deadline was really critical. Having robust community engagement was really critical. And I don't know what I would have bet originally that we would get all this done and be where we are today. So without some slippage. So I want to express my appreciation for all those aspects and look forward to phase 2.
And I don't have a question either. I just really appreciate your inclusion of safety and how detailed you were at evaluating all the different aspects of the park, especially under the SEPTED, and just having each item sort of called out, highlighted, and how it is being addressed. I think it gives me a lot of comfort that this is going to be a safe environment for our community due to the amount of detail that you and your team went through. So appreciate. I mentioned it before, and I'm glad it's here, and I really appreciate what I'm seeing. Thank you.
Councilmember Furtani.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. McCluskey, for a great presentation. I really do appreciate the fact that you accommodated me in asking for what the park looks like in the rain. So that was very nice. Again, I don't have any questions, but I did want to mention that I do appreciate the outreach efforts that your firm took because who knew that a bunch of, what were those things? They were like movable pieces, like jigsaw puzzle pieces, right? Coming together would become something like this. And I think that was an excellent exercise in getting the community engaged. I cannot believe the number of people who came to those. So thanks again.
Thank you, Tracy. Alex, any other questions or comments? From the team? Well, thank you both very much. This is an excellent presentation. We sure appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again. Oh, one more thing. I apologize. Vice Chair Furtani has something to share with Corey and folks here.
I'll just sort of yell. Last month, the Shoreline Arts awarded City of Lake Forest Park the Community Partner Award. And I didn't think of anything with that. Council members Good and Saunders accepted the award on behalf of the city, but truly, thank you very much for the work you do. All of us.
Yeah. Thank you, Tracy. Okay, with that, we are moving on to a public hearing, and I apologize for my voice. Let's see, we're having a public hearing on ordinance 1292, adoption of the 2021 International Building Code, other construction related codes, and an International Fire Code with amendments. And we're gonna start with Calvin is gonna give us a staff presentation. Dr. Kilman, welcome. I thought I'd have a whiteboard here. We can get you one of those electronic screens that you love.
That last one was hard to deal with. This is my third session with you guys. The last one was a work session. First thing I'm going to do is ask you if there are any questions because it's been a month and I'm sure you guys, I threw a lot of information at you with all, what I'm hearing here is a lot of stuff about, excuse me, saving energy and all that. And I'm going to start right into that real quick as far as what the energy code is proposing. And you have to forgive me, I'll probably go deaf or
Deputy Mayor,
please, my voice.
Thank you very much. I was trying to remember from the work session, you had a rough range of increased costs you think that these energy efficiency requirements are going to add to kind of an average building or average apartment or something. And I have to admit, I was surprised by the magnitude of it. And I was just wondering if you could, at some point in your presentation, you don't have to do it right now, comment on what your thoughts on increased costs are.
That's one I'd like to talk about right off the top.
Okay, go
You know,
for
the
it.
energy code is changing because it's going, your R values, which is your resistant values and your insulation. All of that's going up from an R, what we define as an R21 wall. Now we're going to an R21 with an R10 bat. Well, it's a rigid insulation on the outside of the walls, pushing the wall out further another inch from the outside of the sheathing that's usually used for your lateral displacement. Now I'm going to travel around real quick with that. What that affects is one, your windows, how your windows are going to sit in. Now we're punching this thing out. The cost of the rigid insulation, the heat pump. The other part of this too is that we're also increasing the R value in our ceilings from a 48 or 49 to 60. Now think about that. Standard home here in Lake Forest Park is lucky if it has an R13 in the ceiling. Seriously. New single family homes, I've been doing this over 30 years. Typically it's an R30 in the ceiling. I know when I started, it was an R19, an R13 walls. We just keep making these homes more energy tight. Blah, blah, blah. The cost is going up. Part of this thing with when I looked at the studies on the rigid insulation, obviously you want to save any heat loss. Same with the window values. Now we're dropping the U value in a window from a 28 to a 26 now. That's an expensive window. Typically, most houses that I know were built with a here in LFP were built with a U65 window. The smaller you go in your U value, the better the quality of window. So all that cost, when you look at one, gas is not allowed in the new single family home. Now, that being said, it is allowed for, Council Lebo asked me that question last night. It is allowed for cooking, for your stove, for barbecues and all that, but your new single family homes here in LFP all have to be heat pumps. End of subject. Pretty much additions the same way. Now, the cost of a heat pump, when you look at that cost from a furnace, you're almost pretty much about 40% over cost there, the difference between a furnace and a heat pump. Then you start adding these rigid insulation values up here that we're adding now, the higher insulation values in the ceilings. It really is. It's about a $60,000 punch in the gut for a builder. Now, for me, I don't really have a problem with that. I'm an ex-builder, so it didn't really bother me that much, even though I'd fight it. But what are you going to do? We've caused this problem ourselves, and we need to correct it along, little bits and pieces here. 85% of this town is fossil fuel heated. 85%. So any new homes, and I've been here 20 years now. In that time, just about all the single family homes up to about 2 years ago were all gas heat, new single family homes. As of 15, the codes, they were heat pump and mix. Now we adopted the 18 code that went heat pumps. Now we're total heat pumps in new single family homes. So every jurisdiction is going through the same thing we are, as far as that cost plus to the builder, and how's that going to affect the cost of the home?
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's expensive.
Colleagues, other questions?
I'm sorry?
Any other questions?
I was just talking about cost on that.
No, you're good. Okay, please continue, Calvin.
Yeah, some of the other things I talked about in the first two sessions. The good thing about the codes right now for me is the fire code really wasn't altered all that much. The building code itself, there's two codes. When I started, it was one code, the UBC. Now we have the IRC and the IBC. There's not that many changes that really affect the city of Lake Forest Park in the IBC, which is mostly commercial buildings and, multifamily buildings. A lot of those changes would just take me too long to explain to everybody, with firewalls, fire separation walls, atriums, all this other stuff. I do have a big remodel coming up here at Chase Bank, and I have another one from Albertston. It's going to be a Safeway. I just permitted that one. So there's not big changes in the building code per se. A lot of those are in the residential code. I tried to keep it very basic. Last time I was here with, kind of off the cuff stuff that, kind of affects the everyday homeowner when you walk into your house with lighting fixtures. Part of that's the energy code, where you're going to have fixtures in a new single family home now that have sensors when you leave the room, that the lights will start dimming. Now, that won't happen in hallways, bathrooms, or kitchens, but it will happen in living rooms and whatever else, offices and all that. Same with outside lighting, on-off switch, sensors that they start shutting down. I know Tracy and I have talked about this quite a bit. The car charging, that is a requirement as of the 18 code that we adopted a couple of years ago. Now we have to make sure that we have 140 amp breaker in that box. Typically, I work with the Department of L&I inspector, which is Steve, for this area, to make sure that that's in. That circuit just has to be in for that 240 amp breaker or the circuit, I'm sorry. So we could start charging cars. Excuse me. Some of the other interesting ones, I know I kind of lost some of you guys last time on, was the smoke detectors and the locations of them in single family homes. If you have a hallway down here and you vault your ceiling here, and it happens a lot here in custom homes, if your ceiling from this point, you have a smoke detector, if that ceiling rises to above 2 feet, you'll put a smoke detector up top. See, I'm sorry, real proud of my voice. CO2 detectors, those are required when you change out any type of furnace or gas appliance. They are required in new single family homes. End of subject. And they do make you have the CO2 and the smoke detectors made as one now, which is really kind of cool. God, what else? Wow. There's so many things. The other thing I want to let people know, I brought it up last time, was a lot of people down on the waterfront like to buy these commercial grade cooking stoves. Not allowed in the code anymore. You cannot put a commercial grade gas stove in your home anymore. They have to be engineered. Don't ask me how that works, because I've had well, it wasn't exactly a high grade gas commercial stove, but it was pretty close. Anyhow, any questions so far? Because I know this is our third go around here.
Colleagues? Okay, please continue.
Paula? No?
You're doing a good job. Good job.
Oh. Oh, another one. Homeowners love to see me coming, and I go, they call me up for a furnace or a hot water tank replacement. I go, where's your furnace or hot water tank? And they end up smiling at me and they go, it's in the attic or in the crawl space, which is about that deep. And I'm in nice, clean clothes to fall in these things. So the good thing for me is I get to tell them, you know what? Not allowed anymore in the 21 code. It's not happening. This old boy ain't crawling under there anymore. So, because I'm tired of getting so dirty, and you come out, you're all full of mud and cobwebs and everything else. So anyways, not allowed. Yahoo. The other kind of a goofy one that I thought, and I'm throwing all these things out there because for me, these are things that really apply because we build mostly custom homes here. Garage doors now all have to have a manufacturer's stamp on, believe it or not. And they have to be rated. So that's a new one for me. No one would ever think of looking at a garage door to make sure it has a Warnock Hershey stamp on it or a UL listing or anything else like we would with gas appliances. Any questions yet? Please.
Anyone?
No?
Please go.
Just
Go ahead.
continue on. I'm kind of repeating everything I said last time there.
Well, is there anything specific that you'd like to ask questions about?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of looking for.
Vice Chair Furutani, please.
Yeah, thanks, Inspector Tillman, on the update. And I'm just wondering, is there any changes to the solar power code?
Very little. You get more credits. It isn't a requirement that you go solar yet. But if you do go solar, you got to remember in single family home, it's an energy code checklist that they're required to fill out. You have to have 8 credits in the single family home, period. And I'll tell you what, it's hard to get those 8 credits because one, you've got to go, a high percentage of insulation, low E value on your windows, special heat pump, typically a Renai. Yeah, and if you go solar, I think you get like two credits or something like that. So, but I think you and I have talked about this before. I typically hear an LFP run about probably 2 to 3 solar reviews a month. So that means I have 3 permits a month here in town on solar, right? I just had one come in for Brookside Elementary, and that thing's gonna be full of solar panels. So, yeah.
Well, I think
Yeah, I mean, you make it sound like a bad thing, but no, this is great. You make it sound like a bad thing.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. No, I'm used to seeing a single family home where I've got panels here and I've got them on this side of the house. The school's gonna have it all over the place. That's great. A lot of
Councilmember Riddle.
use that. It's being very, very plain there.
So, it's interesting is a lot of these upgrades that is required in the current code, we kind of did voluntarily because we had one of those older LFP homes, no insulation on the
Right.
roof, single pane glass, wood windows where you could see the light through the frame, you know. And it was hefty and it was expensive, but it was amazing how the quality of life in our home improved. There weren't hot spots, cold spots, drafts. Heating bills went down. And so, I mean, it's not a one-to-one savings, but it's a challenge to have to pay for all this extra stuff. But it does make the homes more comfortable in the end. And we're saving on natural gas usage and electrical usage because your homes are staying warm longer without being, you know, needed to be heated. So just want to bring that up. I know it costs a lot, but there are definitely personal benefits to it beyond just meeting the code.
I go into a lot of homes where I walk in and I can tell that the underfloor, the crawl space is not insulated. And people are spending 25,000 for a new heat pump. And I look at them and go, is your crawler insulated? Oh, no, it doesn't have to be. Well, think about your heat loss.
Mhm.
Really? I mean, doesn't make any sense to me. But
Colleagues, any other questions? Maybe we should move on to the public hearing and then staff can answer any questions that come up at that time.
Yes, sounds good.
Thank you, Calvin.
Thank you,
We'll
Mayor.
come back to you as soon as we get through the public hearing.
Yeah, okay.
Appreciate it. If there's- Okay, we will open the public hearing on ordinance 1292 adoption of the 2021 International Building Code, other construction related codes, and International Fire Code with amendments. Is there anyone that would like to make public comment during the hearing at this time? We have no one signed up, but happy to open it up to anyone that's here. Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Thank you, everyone. And I guess, Calvin, you won't be having to answer questions from the public. You're good.
You're good. You're off the hook.
Thank you. All right. Colleagues, let's move on to item 8, and then after that, we'll take a brief recess. I know everyone needs to stretch your legs. We are moving on to where are we? Acceptance of the Lake Forest Park Climate Action Plan. Wow, this is exciting. Corey Roche, welcome back again.
Yes, so I'm here to seek acceptance of the climate action plan done by our dedicated climate action committee. We have Mimi and Sarah in the crowd. This plan was done by the community members of this city. So I think this will be a living document for city and council to look at for many years to incorporate. I know Mark and the Planning Commission have incorporated the elements that need to be that will be approved later on this year with the comprehensive plan. And yeah, I think that's all I have for that.
Thank you, Corey. Colleagues, questions for Ms. Roche? At this point, Councilmember Vice Chair Furtani, or one of you two, we can thumb wrestle for it.
No questions, just a couple of comments. I mean, I'm really glad to see that we'll be approving this. It's been a long time coming. I wanted to call out some of the members of the public who spoke about tire safety from North Seattle College. I think this is something that if we're not addressing tires explicitly, just, you know, we see that transportation is one of the biggest causes of climate issues. And so being able to address, you know, reducing the amount of miles traveled by cars, I think that'll have a knock-on benefit on salmon. Also, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't, and I think it's a number of them left, but I'm a chemistry professor at UW. And so I can check Henry's Law off my city council bingo card. But no, it's great to see that level of public engagement. So yeah, thank you, Professor Bryce.
Thank you, Larry. Vice Chair Furtani.
And I want to echo my thanks to the committee and to the sustainability specialist. And the point is that I think, as you said, this is a living document. And one of the things that we really hope to see is continued community engagement in this plan, because obviously, as we go through the years, the needs will change. And one thing that I really appreciate very much about the community is the fact that we've had so much support from everybody, not just on council, but not just on staff, but throughout the community. As we've talked, we've basically gotten a lot of great suggestions from them. And I think the committee members will attest to the fact that, you know, it's one of the most engaging things that we've done in a very long time. So thanks again very much.
Yeah. And Tracy, you were a fantastic liaison for them.
Deputy Mayor Bodie.
I did want to especially call out how well presented from a public reception point of view, the climate action plan is. I think it is important that citizens can pick it up and actually read it and understand what it's saying, and the graphics are great too. So I just want to say how important I think that is and how well done it is in terms of that continued public engagement, to have it right now and to be able to just even, you know, anyone who picks it up, I think would find it easy to read and to go through. And so it's much appreciated.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Vice Chair Furtani.
One last comment. Does the salmon have the name yet?
We do not have a name yet, so we'll work on that.
I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to move to accept the Lake Forest Park Climate Action Plan.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the Lake Forest Park Climate Action Plan. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Councilmember Riddle.
I'm really happy to have this living document here. I'm thankful to Councilmember Furtani for his liaison role, all the wonderful conversations that the Climate Action Committee has had with the community and with me. And I just have to say, I think this is an awesome tool for us to be moving forward with, and that we really do need to be cognizant of referencing this in our decisions, because it is very useful and giving a value to each of our decisions as it relates to climate. So thank you.
Colleagues, any other comments? I would just like to chime in as well and thank Chair Phillips and the Climate Action Committee for the excellent work. I know it was a tremendous lift. And of course, Liaison Furtani, this is a living, breathing document, and I'm looking forward to the work coming ahead of us here. There's a lot to do, but this is a great, outstanding roadmap, if you will, to move forward with. With that, all those in favor of accepting the Climate Action Plan, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much, Council, and thank you, team. With that, I'd like to take a brief 5-minute recess, folks. We can stretch our legs. I can't feel my toes. Yeah, that sound is in my back. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the City of Lake Forest Park City Council meeting back to order. Thank you, everyone. I hope everybody get a chance to stretch their legs, grab a hot dog or whatever else they have out there outside of the bleachers. With that, I'd entertain a motion for adoption of the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the consent calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much, council. And we are moving on to ordinances and resolutions for introduction and referral. Administrator Hill has resolution 24-1955 authorizing the mayor to execute an amendment to an extension of the Verra Mobility Professional Service Agreement. Welcome, Phil. I know we have our friend Ray Pedrosa as well here. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you, and thanks to Ray for sticking through all that. He learned a lot tonight, so that worked out well. This is just for introduction tonight, and I've got Ray here to answer any questions that you may have about the new fee structure and the way that the contract is put together. But Verra Mobility is the company that owns and operates the city's traffic camera system. It's a lease. We pay a certain dollar amount you've seen in the contract on a monthly basis for a set number of citations, and then there's a fee structure for citations over that threshold set by different types of camera systems. This contract that you have before you, the executed contract was executed back in 2019, had a 5-year term with an automatic extension of 5 years. But with the changes that the council adopted for the new camera type based on legislation, kind of sped up our process and made it so we couldn't just do the automatic extension this fall. We needed to add definition for the new camera type and get in a new fee structure for that camera type. And then the contract also allows for a CPI increase to the fees when the renewal comes along. So this does move those up a couple of months, but it is, as you'll see in the contract, is approximately a 3.4% CPI increase April to April, so April 23 to April 24. And then you'll find in the new, the amendment to the contract, the definition for speed zone, the new 5-year terms, timeline with the automatic extension, and then the fee structure for the new camera type. That's all I've got for you. If you've got any questions for me, otherwise I'd invite Ray Pedrosa from Verra Mobility up to answer any specific questions you have about their methodology for the fee structure that's included. For your
Start with questions for Administrator Hill. Thank you, Phil. Colleagues, any questions? Vice Chair Furutani.
Hi, and thanks for the update. And question I had was about the maintenance of these cameras. As you know, that we've had some issues with vandalism with the cameras, and I'm wondering who's responsible for paying for that?
I think it's the owner, but we will. I don't know that it's specifically identified in this, but I do believe it's the owner. They do own and maintain those pieces of equipment, and this is basically a lease on our end of the contract.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Colleagues, any other questions for Administrator Hill? Councilmember Goodwin.
Yeah, thanks. So the contract, so it's up to 400 per month for the speed zone cameras.
Correct.
And then I think it would be up to 800 a month for the currents what we already have, the red light and school zone cameras.
Correct.
Can you remind me sort of what magnitude of violations are we seeing currently?
So we have never hit that 800 a month threshold on either the red light cameras or the school zone cameras. I think initial estimates from what we're seeing from the warnings is we will exceed the 400 on the new camera types per month.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other questions for Administrator Hill? Colleagues, do you have any questions for Mr. Pedrosa?
Please, he waited.
Any questions? Vice Chair Furutani.
And I may be stealing the mayor's thunder here, but thank you for being here.
And
And
welcome.
yeah, I wanted to also thank you for the data that you were able to supply the mayor with and was kind enough to share. And one of the questions I had was, how does your business model work in the sense that the per event fee is basically lower after we get above that threshold, at least from the point of view of taking the costs to us and dividing by either the 400 or 800?
Yeah, so the per citation cost is essentially cover consumables, postage and mailing, essentially. And the monthly fixed fee is where we recover the investment for the equipment, the design, the construction. So the additional transactional costs are covering consumables. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great
welcome.
question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Colleagues, any other questions for Mr. Pedrosa? I would say too, that as you all may know, under the RCWs and the new House Bill 2384 that was passed and signed by the governor, of course, we can only pay for the cost of the cameras system. And so I appreciate the update on that. And preliminary numbers have started to come through today, and we do indeed have a significant issue on that road, and we'll talk about that at a future date. As was indicated by Vice Chair Furtani, we did have some vandalism problems, I believe on June 4th and 5th I think it was sorted out. Some vandals threw paint all over the cameras as well as on the sidewalk and guardrails and other places. So there's still some of it to be cleaned up, but Deputy Mayor Bodie.
Mayor and councils, as this is an amendment and extension of an existing professional services agreement, is it appropriate for action at this time? Or should we wait for another opportunity? It just occurred to me that it could fit within our policy on contract amendments.
Colleagues' thoughts on Deputy Mayor Bodie's comment about contracts and expediting the process under the three-touch rule, waiving the three-touch rule, excuse me. Councilmember Lebo.
I would be in favor of waiving the three-touch rule. We have plenty to do.
Yeah.
And I also want to express the appreciation for your patience.
Oh, thank you.
I,
Yeah.
I would,
A
yeah.
lot of interesting conversation.
Well, and also express our appreciation for doing it so expeditiously.
Sure.
Because we know that was a big lift,
Yeah,
and
our pleasure.
everybody, you and the team pulled together and made it happen.
It
So
was truly
thank-
was a team effort. Chief and
Chief.
Phil and the rest of the city team. Sure.
Thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
didn't entertain a motion. Well, thank you, Mr. Pedrosa. You may
Thank you.
enjoy the lively banter if you like. But
I would move waiver of our three-touch rule for resolution 24-1955, authorizing the mayor to execute an amendment to an extension of the Verra Mobility Professional Services Agreement.
I will second.
it's been moving the second to waive the three-touch rule regarding where are we here? The resolution 24-1955 authorizing the mayor to execute an amendment to an extension of the Verra Mobility Professional Services Agreement. Are there any further comments or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to a new main motion, I should say.
I move the adoption of resolution 24-1955, authorizing the mayor to execute an amendment to an extension of the Verra Mobility Professional Services Agreement.
Second.
It's been moving second to adopt resolution 24-1955. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? That passes unanimously. Thank you so much, council. This has been a true team effort with you, the city administrator, the police department, public works, our friends at Verra Mobility, and is an essential component in pedestrian safety. And I will start beating this very hard, the drum about that the revenues from under the state statute from these camera installations will go straight to pedestrian and complete streets enhancements after expenses. So anyone who tells you that this is a money grab is completely speaking falsely. With that, let's move on to item 9B, Ordinance 1290, amending Chapter 10.06 of the Lake Forest Park Municipal Code related to automatic traffic safety cameras. Administrator Hill.
Lost Rochambeau to the city attorney, so you get me. House Bill 2384 amended statutes regarding traffic safety cameras that became effective on June 6th of this year. This proposed ordinance before you tonight would update the statutory citations in Chapter 10.06 of the Lake Forest Park Municipal Code. It would add authority for additional types of traffic cameras, amend the presumption that an infraction was committed so it applies to all traffic safety camera violations, and include the statutory requirement regarding a fine reduction for recipients of public assistance and the Washington Women, Infants, and Children Program. That's it in a nutshell. Any questions for me or the city attorney?
Councilmember Riddle.
Just a firm clarification that all the changes in here are simply to align with the new state code and there's no other alterations at this point.
There are no other alterations. This is everything that Attorney Pratt has found that needs to be changed in our code to align.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Riddle. Colleagues, any other questions for Administrator Hill or Attorney Pratt? I just make a quick comment. Many thanks to Kim and the team for updating this. This is forward thinking and it considers additional authorizations that are afforded us under 2384. So you will not be seeing this again after it's adopted in the near future. Councilmember Riddle.
Oh.
No, I'm sorry,
Goldman
Councilmember
whispers.
Goldman.
Jumping off what Councilmember Riddle asked, if this is about aligning our code with state law, does that mean that if we were to not adopt the code, it would essentially be adopted for us by state law?
No, I don't think that's quite right. There are some things we have to include, like we needed to change the RCW references. That would not have been done automatically for us. If you ever wanted to include, say, in section 10.06.010, if you ever wanted to adopt one of these safety cameras that you haven't adopted already, we've included it in the ordinance. So now you could put one of those in, but that would not have been done automatically for you. So we had to put some of these things in here.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Goldman. Colleagues, any other questions?
I guess, is there a time necessary for this as the cameras are active?
The city clerk graciously got this on this agenda and I only gave it to him the day after it was due for this agenda. They did that because he spotted if you got this on as your first touch, you could adopt this before the citations are sent out instead of just warnings.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that timeline.
Yeah, opportunities for 2 additional touches coming
Exactly.
up. So, colleagues, any other questions on point? Comments? Deputy Mayor Bodie.
I am checking again with mayor and council because while I don't think all of these changes are automatically go into place consistent with state law, they are consistent with the recent changes in the state law. So I for one would be willing to waive the 3-touch rule for this in the interest of efficiency. I don't see any public issue or debate about it, but I am open to the views of my colleagues.
Council. Yes, Councilmember Riddle.
I was thinking that, but we have the time before this becomes necessary. And because the traffic cameras have been such a topic of discussion amongst the community, I don't want to feel like we're trying to do this without proper notification. Perhaps for the second touch, we can move it along quicker depending on what's on our agenda. But I think we should let this marinate out there with the community so they feel like they have that time to review it.
That I appreciate that suggestion and comment.
Thank you, colleagues. All right. With that, just for the edification of everyone, in terms of scheduling, the next time this will come up will be at the committee of the whole meeting. If there's any questions or comments, so there won't be action taken there, then it would go on to the meeting, the last meeting of this month.
The 27th.
27th, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we're moving on. Here we are, ordinances and resolutions for council discussion. Resolution 24-1956, and Director Vaughn is already there. I know she's ready to go on vacation.
Good evening, council.
It's amazing how fast you got from over there to here while I was reading that. I'm impressed.
Efficiency. So I'm bringing this forward tonight.
this is the second touch. We did have a conversation at the previous Budget and Finance Committee, and we brought the full policy and procedures. And at that meeting, it was requested to please break them out and have council only adopt the policy portion and to leave the procedure portion internally to create that document separately to adopt it. So what's driving this is that there was an additional, there was a House bill passed, 1621, that changes the limits, the purchasing limits, and that goes into effect on June 30th. And so that's why this is being brought forward. We currently do have two resolutions in place. Resolution 1617, adopted in 2001, and Resolution 1399 in 2014 that also are attached in the package. And so that is basically, this is the second touch. We are just basically asking for some feedback because this is the first time you will be, or that you have seen the resolution that was carefully drafted, so carefully by our city attorney with all of the feedback collaboratively. And so if there are any additional items of feedback, they would be appreciated at this time.
Colleagues, questions? Councilmember Lebo.
I appreciate very much the approach that you've taken in response to some of the questions and discussions that we had earlier. As I look at it, I think it's there. I'm just hoping that perhaps it might be clarified, and that is that while it says in, pardon me, so in section 2, adoption, blah, 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 adopts the following purchasing policies. A, purchasing authority. For expenditures included in the annual budget, the following authority is granted to the administration to execute the contracts and agreements, which is fine. Where I don't see is it clear that the city council still has to approve certain contracts that exceed these limits? And I think the answer is yes, but I don't see it as being clearly described.
I certainly can make that more clear. I'm probably playing shorthand because council has all of this authority and you're delegating what's in here, but that could be made much more clear if you prefer.
I do, because it does talk about, and when you have, and I went back and read some of the other ones. So for example, when you have a public works contract that exceeds the limit, then in the old ones, it's explicit about going to the council and getting approval. This one's not explicit, but to your point is, if you read it, we otherwise as council always have the authority, and only is it given to the administration, can the administration otherwise do it? And we're not explicitly giving it to the administration. It is nice to have that.
I will put that in there.
Because then you don't have to actually think about what is given and what is not given.
That makes sense.
So
I will put it in there.
so as you read through it, just look for that, so that again, I was reading the older resolutions and it was clear. And so I would just ask that for the benefit of others that we do that. Otherwise, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Lebo. Colleagues, any other questions on the purchasing policy changes and updates? Okay, this will come back again soon. Thank you, Director Vaughn. All right, and now we're going to call up Director Vaughn again to talk about Ordinance 1294, amending the 2023-2024 budget. Thank you, Director Vaughn.
Thank you, Council, again. Going over the budget amendment, again, we did cover this at the Budget and Finance Committee. I'm just going to go over a couple things, saying that budget amendments are a very normal course of a budget. It is also a living document that we expect to change, and I'm trying to buy our city clerk just a smidge of time in order for him to bring up the schedule of adjustments so we can walk through them together. Perfect. And so just walking into the general fund, I'm going to try to go over this pretty briefly. So a lot of what's being amended within the general fund on the revenue side is what we call pass-throughs. So it's reimbursements or grant reimbursements that then would be a pass-through. So you're going to have a revenue and a matching expenditure. So police services, the overtime from being paid by outside agencies, again, you'll see that that is a pass-through. Some of the grants we have, the body worn camera grant, the Star Chase, the police WASPIC traffic safety, and we also have a community development grant. The sewer and surface water utility taxes, those are additional. We budgeted those very conservatively, and it is time to expand them a little bit on all sides. You will see that 3 times in this budget amendment. Donations from the Public Safety Police Foundation. They assisted in the additional cost for the vehicle outfitting. Walking down, you will see passport revenue. You will also see an expenditure on the expenditure side in addition to the revenue side, because we did hire an additional part-time in order to match the service need that has been requested from our local community. And then the investment interest, you will see that in multiple funds, and that is just a great shout out to the short and long-term investments. The interest rates currently right now are remaining high, which that's just a fantastic. It affects the only thing I get really excited about, and it helps every single fund that the city has. So then, and the final one, so Sound Transit provides deposit. And again, you will see that I would define that as another pass-through. We define it not necessarily as revenue. It's defined as kind of like another source because it is technically like a refundable deposit, similar to if you rented someplace, an apartment or a house, and you had a refundable deposit, that would then be allowed back to you. So it's a little bit different than some of the other items that we handle. So if we can walk down to the expenditure side, some of these are just general housekeeping. So again, anytime that we built some tighter budgets into travel expenses, but that means that your council members and your staff are attending trainings, which is what we want to see. To keep up on all of the most current information. Again, some professional services, that again is something we define as some housekeeping. The staff recognition, that we have increased that, and that has also increased due to a lot of retirements. Walking down to the municipal services, the passport clerk, I mentioned that you would see that on the expenditure side in addition. Memberships, the city participated in being a member of the National League of Cities this year, which was not originally budgeted, so we just need to do a quick amendment. The finance department banking services were not broken out separately, so those are being broken out separately and shown. The police department, on the limited term, as part of the changes, we made an additional +3 in response to a lot of the retirements that were taking place. And so we are taking one of those back. It's still a +2 on the limited term, but taking just one position back, and that's a salary and benefit. Again, the police department overtime, you're seeing that as a pass-through on the expenditure side. And then the grants, animal control services, we have been talking about these at the Budget and Finance Committee. Actually, back in 2023, some of those expenditures exceeded historical amounts, and so we need to increase that number. Jail expenses, I feel like a broken record on this one. We have been talking about it for a very long time. We adjusted it as part of the mid-buy and it still continues to come in high. So we're looking at an additional amendment. The public defender contract, that increased in December of 2023. And so we need to make that actual change, amending that contract up, that budget up because of the contract. And then Sound Transit, that is a pass-through. Also going to the parks, the seasonals. We have been able to hire seasonals, which has been an excellent thing. And so we in the original budget, the amount, the dollar amount as far as what we anticipated paying them as a wage and the amount of help we anticipated receiving was lower than what we were able to actualize in 23 and 24. And so we are looking to increase that budget for the Public Works Department, which you will see that throughout. And then for the parks facilities, it's the same. And then transferring out to assist the police foundation, that is going to go to the actual vehicle fund. So if we can walk down, and that concludes the general fund, and then walking down to the street fund, again, you'll see the investment interest and you will see the seasonal employees and benefits. And then I actually think that I may have passed over this, but great opportunity to circle back. The roadside maintenance for the tree removal contract, that was approved by council previously, but the budget wasn't amended in order to expand the allocation of what is approved, even though the contract was, the budget piece was not. And so I worked with Director Perigo in order to only amend what he thought he would use within the 2024 range. And then walking down to the Transportation Benefit District fund, that increases the sales tax by the 0.01. Again, these were new revenues that were implemented, and so we estimated them very conservatively. But it is time to expand that. And again, interest revenue. Walking down to the contingency fund and the budget stabilization fund, again, those are just the investment interest with no expenditures tied. And then walking down to the strategic opportunity fund, again, investment interest and the RCO grant. This is kind of a housekeeping item. We did receive it and we did amend it into the previous budget, but it didn't actually, we didn't receive the funds until the 23 and the 24 budget. So this is more of a housekeeping item to true it up, to carry it forward transparently. And then walking down a transfer in from the capital improvement fund. You heard this evening a great presentation on the lakefront property, and that is what this is tied to. Walking down to the expenditure side, the lakefront property development, that additional 870, you heard a lot this evening already about the remaining RCO grant. And so you have the 600,000 that's being transferred in addition to the 270 from the RCO grant being allocated under the lakefront park property development. And then again, the interfund loan, that again is a housekeeping item because the actual transaction of the grant revenue coming in and expending out did hit in this budget and not the previous one as anticipated. So then walking to the ARPA fund, that fund at this point, we just need to allocate in addition, the lost revenue for general government services, and the 200,000 for the surface water master plan, that was actually in the original adopted budget. The intention of that was, but the actual numbers somehow did not get adopted in that budget with all the moving parts. And so we are going back to clean that up. And then walking down to the capital improvement fund, again, the investment interest. And then the 600,000 transferring out of that to support the continued phase development of the lakefront property. The transportation capital fund, again, investment interest, starting to sound like a broken record, but a good one because that is a win. And the Safe Street early action, we're going to increase that, and that is for some traffic studies and additional traffic improvements. And then walking down to the sewer utility fund, we have the sewer utility tax, which is increased because that is brought in by the actual ratepayers, which then becomes an expense to that fund and revenue into the general fund. So it's a three-part. Again, expanding the employee salaries, and that is tied directly to seasonals. So then we're going to go on to the next page of the surface water, which again, the surface water is in the same boat with the utility tax on the revenue side, the expenditure side, walking into being revenue on the general fund side. And then tying in the additional 200,000 intended for the surface water master plan, and the investment interest. The employee salaries, again, that's tied to the seasonal salaries. And then the third part of the tree removal contract, there have been some that have been associated with the surface water fund. And then walking down to the surface water capital fund, there's two projects there on the expenditure side. The 35th Avenue drainage, I broke it out to be very transparent on the design and the construction. And then the 28th Avenue culvert repair on the design and construction side. And then walking down to the final item of the police foundation donation that supported the additional costs for the Tahoes that the city was able to purchase. And so they just assisted on the overage of what it costs to actually outfit those vehicles, because as we continue to say, costs have significantly continued to increase. And that concludes my overview of the budget amendment. Are there any questions?
Council, questions? Thank you, Director Vaughn. Apologies. Councilor Goldman.
Yeah, thanks for the detailed presentation. A question and then a suggestion. If you jump back up to the TBD fund, I just want to clarify, is the TBD sales tax, is that 1/100% or 1/10%?
It's a 0.1%, right?
Okay, it's listed as 1/100% there.
Thank you.
And then also some of the column headers say 23-24 budget amount, and some of them say adjustment amount. So these are all the adjustments. And so maybe just changing those to say, because I think on the general fund page, it explicitly says adjustment. So just making it more clear to the public that this is not the original, this is how much the original is changing by.
Yes, it's the schedule. Yes, correct.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, other questions or comments on the budget amendment? It's a more robust one than we normally have. And thank you, Director Vaughn, for pulling this all together with your team. Colleagues, going once, going twice. Okay. Thank you very much, Director Vaughn. Appreciate that. And I guess we'll have this is coming back on the 27th.
This will be coming back in July.
Oh, July. Okay.
In July. But I will circle back that our city clerk, Matt, has so graciously offered to continue moving forward with our purchasing policy in order to have that across the finish line this month.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, we are moving on to Director Hoffman. Mark is going to be talking to us about Ordinance 24-1295, amending Chapter 18.52 of the Lake Forest Park Municipal Code signage, to bring the sign code into compliance, recent legal decisions. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Mark Hoffman, Community Development Director for the city. No presentation tonight, but a little bit of background for the recording. The Planning Commission took portions of 2 years to look at the sign code specifically, update it for recent legal decisions, primarily Reed versus Gilbert. Their recommendation was forwarded to the City Council in December. I came on board in early 2024 and picked this up. The versions that we brought to the City Council in April had some technical issues. We've worked that out. I took a new format from existing code, went word for word, got rid of any hyperlink issues from whichever version was scanned or Adobe issues. What you have before you is, mine is one little typo. We strike out underlined version of the existing code. Everything in red is an amendment. Everything that is in strikeout format is deleted. Everything underlined is added. This reflects the Planning Commission's recommendations. There were several questions from December that made it into April that may have been answered or may not. Tonight's that opportunity to follow up. There is additional time. Staff is waiting until it's indicated by the council there's no more substantive issues with this draft ordinance. At that point, we would do environmental review and the required Department of Commerce review, and then come back to you for a couple opportunities if needed, and some slight opportunity for amendment. So tonight is a check-in to see if it's shaped enough or clear enough for the council and the community to take those next steps before it comes back to you in ordinance form. The primary changes are Reed versus Gilbert, can't regulate by content. So that's primarily the temporary signs. Temporary signs are in all zoning districts. What is, and I'll speak in generalities, what is primarily not changed is the commercial standards for signs. But temporary signs within the town center zone or the business neighborhood zone. So there's a lot of red throughout the code. It's primarily so that we don't regulate by content. It's primarily putting in place temporary signs, taking away some of the other terms. The Planning Commission did take a broader look at, since we're diving into this section of code, what else needs to be fixed. What I've found since April is, in looking at the issues from the recording from council, they've done a very cohesive job as far as the remainder of the municipal code. There are several references to other sections of the code that match some of the questions that council had. Primary example is in the nonconformity section in Lake Forest or Park Municipal Code. So I find it very cohesive, but I do have two questions. After there's an opportunity for any remaining questions that I can answer for you, two areas of interest we might explore after tonight, either before we go to commerce or after. They're not what I would call significant, but they could result in clarity when this ordinance, if this ordinance is adopted. So I'll pause there for questions and can revert back to any questions you may have in April or last December.
Thank you, Director Hoffman. Vice Chair Furtani.
Yeah, thank you, Director Hoffman. And it's great to see this actually moving forward. Just as a reminder, do political signs fall now under the temporary signs category?
They do. So any reference to a political sign is now under the category temporary sign, and temporary signs are spoken to in each of those zoning designations.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councilmember Legal.
Thank you. So to follow up on that, so in section 18.52.080, signs in the public right of way. So if campaign, I'm assuming political signs are the same as campaign signs, or are they differentiated?
If my perspective in reviewing this and putting this document together is, what are the impacts if these amendments were made?
Yeah.
So I don't have a comparison with the past, but if these are made, they would be temporary signs. There would
So-
be no term for political or campaign signs.
So if I interpret this under that section, subsection 6 says no more than 6 signs may be displayed in citywide in the right of way of the same event. So I would interpret that my esteemed colleagues would only be allowed to put up 6 signs for their campaign.
In the public right of way, that's correct. That's how it currently reads.
Now,
The public right of way crosses past single family properties, multifamily properties, commercial, everything in between. The code deals with temporary signs once you cross that property line. But specific to signs in the public right of way, they have to be 5 feet back where there's no sidewalk and you get 6. That's the way it's currently written.
that's the way it's currently written.
Yes.
Do we actually think that that's the way it will be enforced?
Enforcement's a different issue. Usually you get so many that you have to take them away for safety issues without being accused of affecting an election. I've never been in a position of counting or enforcing 6 signs in all right of ways. One of the comments from city attorney at that prior meeting is you may want to think about that.
So help me understand, what's the intent of trying to restrict campaign signs to 6 citywide for each candidate?
It's not an attempt to restrict a
But it
political
does have,
sign.
but it does
It's-
have that effect.
They fall under temporary signs. And so the sentiment from the planning commission is whether it's 200 political signs or 200 farmers market signs or 200 of anything, they are a temporary sign. And if you're going to limit the quantity for any type, you cannot read the content. So it will have a reducing effect on political signs compared to existing code.
So is there any consideration for political free speech?
That I can't speak to. It's not as apparent as it sounds that it would reduce it. You could have 5 of these on your single family lot. A candidate can choose to put 1 in front of that single family lot and count it as his or her 6. Whether this resolution ends on 6 or not, I can't speak to tonight. That's under your control.
So the court has told us I can't read that sign and say that is a political sign versus the farmer market sign. So you don't have to go with 6 or you don't even have to, limit the number of signs that someone puts in the right of way. That's up to council. Planning commission thought 6 in the right of way. There's not a limit of how many you can have in the city. This is only dealing with those in the right of way.
Deputy Mayor Bodie.
Yes, my recollection is there was discussion of this and it went around and around because of course we know what kind of, I mean, even Secret Garden Tour has more than 6 signs in the right of way right now. So I think this was basically sent to the council to try to figure out what we thought about the limitations on temporary signs.
Councilmember Riddle.
And to even be more restrictive, for the same event could apply to all candidates. So the first one gets 6 out, gets them. So we have to be real careful about how we think about that because the election is the event, not the campaign.
Colleagues, other questions or comments? Councilmember Gold.
Yes, thanks for their presentation. I know that it's a really thorny issue. There's a lot of nuance. I'm trying to wrap my head around the legal landscape. It seems, if I understand this, there's actually 3 levels of sign legality that commercial, based on Supreme Court and Ninth Circuit, commercial signs are treated differently, whether they're on or off premises, and their commercial is different than non-commercial. I guess sorry, it's late at night. I'm trying to form full sentences, but there was Reed by the Supreme Court, and then there was Reed as the Ninth Circuit subsequently interpreted it, and then there is a City of Austin decision. So if there's 3 levels to signs, does our sign code have those 3 levels? Or are we taking a simpler sort of one-size-fits-all approach of just saying we're not going to read to figure out if it's commercial or not?
Well, from a community development planner's perspective, it does.
And the planning commission knew about and discussed those three main levels that you just laid out. And if they simplified something, then that was a choice that they made. And that's in the draft.
Okay, and,
But they did realize that there were those levels.
okay, so since there's quite a lot of red, would you say that the planning commission overall chose to simplify deliberately, or that they tried to keep those three distinctions in place?
I would need to go back through it to be able to answer that question adequately. I haven't looked at what they did from that perspective. I was more at the end just trying to draft what they were making decisions on, but I can do that.
The council member. Colleagues, any other questions for Director Hoffman? There's going to be other opportunities to weigh in on this, but Mr. Hoffman is looking for direction right now. Mr. Lebo.
I would just propose that I would strike the limitation on the 6 signs or the 5 feet off the roadway. There, for campaigns, I'm not in favor of those limitations.
Colleagues, thoughts on Mr. Lebo's suggestion? Anyone else like to, Deputy Mayor Bodie?
I certainly think that a limitation to 6 doesn't work. And of course, the issue of the event is another gray area. And so I'm open to changes. At this point, I was trying to think how many yard signs an average campaign puts out, but it's at least 100, so maybe we just take out the number. But I also, in looking at this, was confused because number 7 in that same section, 0.080, says a sign exempt from permitting because of size, basically, which on the earlier provision 040, it says you can't keep it up for more than 90 days. This one says shall be displayed for 30 days or less in any 1-year period, where in the previous section, it says 90 days or less for any 1-year period. So unless I'm misunderstanding the interplay of the two provisions, they're inconsistent.
I don't think they're so much inconsistent as they're dealing with two different types of property. This is specific to the public.
Oh, the right of way.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So in your house, in front of your house, you can, keep a sign up for a long time. And here, okay, thank you for that
They
clarification.
gave more flexibility to for
Yeah,
instance, single family homeowner than in the public right of way.
okay.
Uh,
So, but then what if that's a political sign?
So
only
that would limit you if you had both a primary and a general.
Right, right. So I do think that these are the examples we're thinking of, as well as others like farmers market signs, which might be up for
Yeah,
the
every
farm
weekend.
every weekend. Yeah. So anyway, we should think of the duration issues, neutral to the content.
Well, the question sometimes is there a problem we're trying to solve?
I will say the planning commission there were members on the planning commission who saw an excessive amount of signs in the right of way could be a problem. So that was a focus of some members on the planning commission during those meetings.
What we can no longer say is take your signs down within a week after the election. So that was the other issue in play, I think.
We just comply with state law in that regard.
Mr. Lebo.
Just to clarify,
course.
state laws would suggest or state what?
I'll look it up and see what it is for the close. I do not recall off the top of my
I
head
think
how
this
long
is
you have
state
to let
statute. I
them.
think it's 1 week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
look.
I'm pretty sure. I have a quick question, if I might. How would that impact like Seattle's slow the flock down signs that they put in right of ways for pedestrian safety.
Government purpose signs are exempt.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Because we've been thinking about other ones like your otter slow down. We'll find some others. Mr. Lebo. It's
That-
getting late.
But it would affect a homeowner who wanted to put up a sign that would encourage people driving down their street in a residential area to slow down.
It would regulate them to size and number, yes. but
And duration, if they put
And
it in.
duration, but I would
So,
not
Ooh.
read the copy.
but if you wanted somebody driving by to see it, you might want to put it near or into the public right of way, which would be restricted.
Under 080, yes.
Again, I'm not a proponent of the numbers or durations. Somebody's, how do you say, it's in the eye of the beholder.
Vice Chair Furtado.
Thank you. And Attorney Pratt, one of the other things I thought of was, doesn't the state also have to comply? So can the state even have a statute on the duration of a political sign if we can't discriminate based on content?
That's a very good question. I'll say we did not want to write this, so we were not in compliance with the state law. So we were trying to hold that line. But I don't know that that statute has been changed since these decisions came out, which are getting less and less recent as we keep saying that.
Colleagues, to Mr. Lebo's point, what is your appetite for the removal of said provision about the number? That's Riddle.
I have no idea. It's such it's such a difficult, because what are the unintended consequences? I mean, I think I would like to entertain, how do we improve it? Not sure completely eliminating it is going to give us a solution to what the planning commission some of the planning commissioners had said was just too much clutter, too much distraction, too many challenges when all you can see is signage and you kind of see the grass behind it. But I think we need to address it. I just don't know how.
Okay, Vice Chair.
And thank you. And I agree with Councilmember Riddle. And I think one of the things is, if you recall, in the 70s, Aurora in Seattle just was like billboard city, right? And I think that was some of the urban blight, the visual blight that we were trying to combat at the time. I think my point here is that I'm very much in favor of removing the limitation on number, but not on duration. Otherwise, the word temporary doesn't really have a whole lot of meaning.
Colleagues, in the issue of timing, Mr. Goldman, you look like you had a comment, and then I'll make a second.
Yeah, I
Suggested.
suppose, I don't know what the number should be, but I think there's a room for compromise on both of these. And then I think like 30 days or 60 days is too short, because the farmer's market is May through September. That's already, what, 4 months? And primary to general. So I think we need a longer time frame, but it shouldn't be all year long. And then also for number of signs, I think 6 is too few. I don't think it should be infinite, but so should it be 20? Should it be 50? I think that that's a place where we can come to a compromise on what a reasonable number is for both of those.
Councilmember Riddle.
I'd like to know more about the ability to regulate signs that are specifically related to an event, because we do have a specific piece in the code here where they have to be removed within 10 days. So you kind of have to know the content a little bit to be able to know that it's under that provision. And because political signs do tend to be around the event of an election, that can they be considered an event style sign and be regulated separately, just like the duration of removal is regulated separately for an event sign? It's just kind of a question.
And a question of degree, how close do you want to be in compliance with, the Supreme Court?
Yeah, yeah.
A temporary sign is a sign type, a pylon sign is a sign type, a wall sign. But as soon as you get into the content that a staff member has to read, oh, it's an event. If it's a off-premise sign, that's where that lighter interpretation or less strict interpretation is. You need to read it to realize whether it's on-site or off-site. That's not the same as the Reed versus Gilbert level. So, but it's a slippery slope. The more you have to have staff read the sign to make a determination, the safe area is, call it a temporary sign, because that's a sign type. Then you have to regulate that type.
Yeah, so I'm just curious how we get how does this apply to 1852-045 temporary signs item or number F? And again, you don't have to answer right now, but I'm just kind of curious how that fits into this current sign rules.
What was that citation again?
That was the temporary signs, 1852-045, and it's letter F.
Deputy Bodie.
Yes, I appreciate all the discussion so far. It's helped me think through this. I would support removing the limitation on the number of signs in view of political campaigns, honestly. So staying content neutral, but being mindful of that example. And but I agree that a temporary sign is not a permanent sign, right? So I think looking at the duration to see what would cover the primary through the election time period, it might be longer than 90 days. But so at the point though, if you get to 9 months, it would be, not exactly a temporary sign. So perhaps some extension of the 90 days as well to take into account the calendar count.
Thank you. Colleagues, Director Hoffman, do you have enough to go forward? It's going to come back to council another at least twice or at their pleasure. Do you have enough to go forward with right now, or?
I have one other suggestion, then I think we do. Nowhere in here do I see anything about property owner permission. It's assumed, but every code I've used had an element of, if you're going to put a sign up on private property, you better have property owner permission.
Sure.
Some codes require it, some sort of proof. Some codes just simply state you must as a criteria. I would go with the latter. That's one other element. Given that, I fully expect Commerce to grant expedited review, regardless of some minor changes we may make. This quantity of temporary signs in the public right of way may be in that category that we can go through environmental review, through expedited Commerce review, and still have a discussion on the items you've talked about tonight in potentially 3 more touches and a public hearing.
Councilmember Riddle.
Listening to you, I would ask, can we talk about density of signs within the right of way? Some number within some distance, and would that give us the ability to not have the overabundance? And would that be allowed under the, I mean, again, we wouldn't be able to do it per content, but simply in order to prevent, sightline issues or whatever. Do you think you could speak to that or look into that?
Sightline issues are addressed. When you mean density, do you mean like signs have to be 5 feet apart or something like that?
Yeah, no more than X number of signs every, 10 feet or every 50 feet or what,
We
I don't
could
know.
write that, but think about enforcement.
I know.
But we could
It
we
is a
write that?
criteria.
Yes.
The code I've most recently dealt with did not have a maximum number. And did deal and was Reed versus Gilbertified with the different land uses, and tended to regulate public rights of way, but they did it through measures like that. It can't be in a median, it can't be a public safety thing, it can't block pedestrian access, can be pulled. Didn't have specifically a 1 sign per 100 feet or 1 sign per stretch, but it didn't have a maximum thing. But it really ratcheted down 1 level by saying it cannot be in a planter strip. If there's a lane of travel, curb gutter, a planter strip, and a sidewalk, and then the right of way still extends, it could be in the right of way in a safe way, but I didn't have to count it. If it were in the planter strip or in a median or tacked to a tree, taped to a street light, I could pull it. That's easy to enforce weekly, a quick trip through town. But once you get into a criteria which I believe you could do, then I'd have to measure every 200 feet and say your sign is in compliance. It's just 5 feet too close of the 200 feet. And that starts to get really burdensome.
Okay, colleagues? Yes, Councilmember Golden.
Sorry, two more things I just thought of. So one about density. I worry that we might be setting ourselves up that if we say like, you can only have X number of signs at an intersection. Well, does that mean if someone decides to put up 8 signs, they've effectively shut out all the other candidates from that intersection because they got there first and were greedy? Also, I wonder, is there anything in here about homeowners versus HOAs? That if like, are HOAs allowed to regulate on content? Like, is that a matter for the city or is that just a private matter between homeowners and homeowner associations?
Mostly it's a CC&R private civil matter and our regulation would apply. But their rules can govern no signs. That's up to them. I'm not going to step into that. But as it's written, one of the comments was, how does this apply to apartments and multifamily? Right now, it's based on site, not unit. So as written, if you had a 20-unit apartment, that site is limited. But the CC&Rs and whether the apartment managers even have the right or ability as management or a partial owner of a condo to regulate signs, I can't speak to. I wouldn't touch that. But the current amendments regulate the multifamily site to that maximum. How they break that up amongst residents, it's not in our code.
And just 2 more comments. Temporary signs on fences. We see that a lot. If you've got privacy fence and you want to participate in the political discourse, you would put the sign on your privacy fence. It would be a temporary sign and it wouldn't be allowed under this code necessarily. And then also, maybe it's nitpicky, but indirectly illuminated. Yeah, you put it under street light, it should still be allowed. I'm curious where indirectly, I understand directly, but indirectly seems like it's a little bit fuzzy for you to enforce.
A street light, utility, regardless who owns it, the sign's coming down.
But like if it's underneath the street light, it's indirectly illuminated by the street light. If it's on the right of way, right? Like, see, it gets, I don't know if that's useful to have in here because I don't know how you would.
Well, and that level of detail, I don't know that you can reach in code. Signs are an easy topic. It's sign regulation.
Yeah.
But then you get to that level of detail and there's so many different varieties.
So I'd be okay with striking indirectly. I think directly is important. We don't want people out adding a lot of light pollution to our community.
Yeah, the intent is that the sign and the installation doesn't add to the light issue.
Colleagues, we're at 10:06. Be sensitive to staff time.
If that's the
well as-
consensus, I could go forward with commerce and SEPA and do that. One other thing, home occupations, separate section, nonconformity, separate section. Everything in here is consistent with those two. Home occupations, signs are not allowed. And on these amendments, signs are not allowed. Nonconformities takes care of many of the questions asked before. There was a sign inventory done 10, 15 years ago for nonconformities. Our nonconformity section has a specific subchapter for nonconforming signs. And in 3 years, they're supposed to go away. And this does not amend that other area of code, unless you would like us to broaden it out. That's all I have to comment on tonight.
Thank you, Director Hoffman. And just for a moment of levity, in the 15 odd years I've been involved with city things, there have been 3 topics of jokes that late at night. One, material bin covers, tennis court lighting, which we've completed now. And if you all finish the sign code, I'm not going to have anything to joke about except for the material bin covers after this. So they're almost done too. We're gonna have to
Next
find new things to
generation.
make,
Yeah.
find some new things. Thank you, Director Hoffman, very much.
Just, Mayor, just one
Yeah.
other comment. And when I'm speaking to, I understand the safety and I understand not wanting to put them into roadway medians because that means you're having to cross traffic in order to get to them. which may lead to a safety issue, but limiting signs to not be closer than 5 feet of the roadway in our area, I would just suggest that they be placed in a safe manner.
And I could find that reference real
That's a
quick.
reference,
I think it's in the main temporary sign section.
temporary sign section, 4, subsection 4.
Thank you.
Mr. Bertoni?
The moment of levity I had was I realized that all of a sudden there can only be 6 Shorecrest graduate high school in 2024, right? I mean.
In the public right away.
In a public right
They can have it on their lawn
What
though.
about the Brookside graduates, Lakefront Park graduates?
There is a bit of art form to enforcement. You're not gonna get every word in there. I will enforce every word that's in there. It could also be seen by standard practices. Maybe an election is 2 events, a primary and a general. So you can get to these kind of nuances, but every word you add actually makes it more difficult. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have Administrator Hill is ordinance 24-1291, adopting a new chapter 3.95, acceptance of donations in the Lake Forest Park Municipal Code. Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll keep this short because there's just one change and you have to make a decision tonight on that change. In the ordinance under H, donors of real property, this was that you couldn't, if you donate more than $10,000 are prohibited from applying for permits under Title 16 and 18. Council had requested that we give you options. 1, the city council may grant an exception under the following circumstances, or 2, the city administrator or designee may grant exceptions, and it's the same 2 items listed that would allow that, either permits necessary to address emergent circumstances related to tree canopy preservation enhancement in Title 16, 14050, or permits necessary to address emergent circumstances related to critical areas 1616 to 20. And we've had several touches on this, so any questions?
Questions for Mr. Hill? Councilmember Riddle.
So just to help me understand, for like critical areas, if there was a slide that they had to reinforce or something like that, that might be what would be something that they would need
If
to.
we had a slide, if you had a tree coming down, a dangerous tree, anything along that, anything that's an emergent nature.
Okay.
And it applies really to those steep slopes and those tree items. And then all of Title 18, because that's strictly land use related. So make a big donation, then come in to redo the town center. And then the other thing that we covered last time, this does not have anything to do with building code. So this does not preclude anybody within the building code.
Colleagues? Okay, thank you, Mr. Hill. Moving on now.
No,
I'm sorry.
point of order. This
Yep.
was a request for action.
Oh, was there? I apologize.
So I believe that in order to move this forward, we need to choose.
Mhm.
And I would move that we adopt the option. City administrator or designee may grant an exception under the following circumstances as an administrative action would be my proposal.
I would second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion of Councilmember Lebo's motion? Councilman Fred Honey.
Completely agree with council members Riddle and Lebo, but help me clarify my thinking. Why am I for that?
I would suggest that the administration is in a good position to make an assessment of whether or not, as an emergent issue, it should be an exemption. And the likelihood would be low because you'd have to have 2 different circumstances apply. A $10,000 donation that have occurred within that time period and an emergent issue. It would be highly unlikely, although not improbable or possible, that somebody could make a donation and then declare it an emergent issue, but then you would have to have the administrator otherwise make a decision that would be contrary to what the council members might make, which again would be not improbable, but unlikely.
Councilmember Riddle.
And the other option would delay action. If we had to wait for the next council business meeting, we'd have to set up a special meeting, because if it is an emergent action, like they have a slide and they need to get in there and reinforce it, engineering, I wouldn't want to put someone in that position to sit there and wait for us.
please.
I appreciate your clarifications. Councilmember Riddle, that of course is a great practical consideration. Councilmember Lebo, I appreciate that that's the one that probably has the least appearance of impropriety.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bertani. Colleagues, what's your pleasure? So,
There's a motion.
yeah, so I'm sorry, was a move to amend or to adopt this as amended?
Believe we're, but, no, great, now I got.
It was a motion to accept the wording, not to adopt the.
accept the word.
Accept the wording. Okay, there's a motion and a second on the floor to adopt the wording that was suggested. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you. Mr. Lebo.
So I would move that we adopt ordinance 24-1291, adopting a new chapter 3.95, acceptance of donations in the Lake Forest Park Municipal Code as amended.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance 24-1291, adopting new chapter 3.95, acceptance of donations in the Lake Forest Park Municipal Code, acceptance of donations. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you very much, council. Yay. Let's see, moving on. Is there any other business, colleagues? You don't have to excuse anyone. Councilmember Goodman.
I know it's late. I'll be brief on this. I know recently the administration made a decision about virtual public comment. I think it's a worthwhile topic for the city council as a whole to discuss, perhaps at a future committee of the whole.
Deputy Mayor Bodie?
I concur.
Fair enough. Let's see, council committee reports. And keep in mind, we have an executive session at the end of this. Council member reports. Vice Chair Furutani.
Again, I'll be brief. On July 16th, from 2:00, there will be a King County elected elected officials work session for the for K4C. So the King County Cities Climate Collaboration. So you're all, of course, welcome to come.
Thank you very much. Any other council member reports? Let's see. Real quick mayor's report. You may know it was a bit of a rocky couple of weeks. Some issues related to public comments and some other issues. So I would certainly entertain a conversation about that in the future. And I thank the council for their consideration about the safety of all of us, including my family. And on a positive note, the chief may know this, that on Friday afternoon at 4:00, there was a cardiac incident with a cyclist who was riding down Perkins Way. And fortunately, he happened to be, a person was driving by, saw this person collapsing off of a bike, had a massive heart attack. And there happened to be a nurse right at the house nearby, and they were able to bring him back. And I hope he is doing very well. He was apparently conscious at the time that he was loaded into the ambulance, but he had to be completely revived by this individual. So at some point, I hope that those two individuals that saved his life can be recognized by our community. So that's a very positive thing. And by the way, I won't say who his name is, but he is a very regular cyclist around here. So you would probably recognize him. So I'm very happy that I hope he's well. With that, city administrator's report, Mr. Hill.
I don't have anything, but for the executive session, the city clerk can shut down this meeting. We can stay in this room so you don't have to run downstairs and back up, and then he'll fire back up the meeting so you can adjourn.
Okay, and no action will be taken on.
No action will be taken.
Okay. How long are we talking about, Mr. Hill?
It's up to you guys. Let's say 20 minutes and we'll go from there.
Okay, we will adjourn to executive session for 20 minutes.
You have to say why. The
I'm
RCW.
sorry, thank you very much. For potential litigation per RCW 42.30.110 Prens 1 Prens I. Thank you very much, Mr. Goldman. I am,
Thank you, everyone.
thank you, everybody.
Thank
A
you.
little threadbare. Thank you, everybody, for your patience, and we're adjourned.